Hey guys, tonight we're tiptoeing into the cold pre-dawn kitchen of a 1950s housewife, the woman who somehow produced a full hot breakfast for an entire family every single morning while wearing lipstick and pretending the whole thing was effortless. Not with a chef, not with a staff, not even with a decent night of sleep. Just her, an apron, a percolator, and a can of bacon grease older than the marriage. Before we settle in, thank you so much for showing up tonight. If you drift off before the eggs are done, I am choosing to take that as a 5-star review, so go ahead and tap like and subscribe, and leave a comment about what your grandmother used to make for breakfast, and whether anyone was ever brave enough to complain about it. Now get comfortable. Fan on, lights low, blanket pulled all the way up, and maybe pour yourself something that did not arrive as a frozen cylinder you had to beat against the counter. Ever stop to wonder why bacon and eggs became the great American breakfast in the first place, or who exactly decided that was the plan? Who ruled that a woman had to finish her hair before she was allowed near a skillet? What on earth was in the little packet you kneaded into the margarine to make it yellow? Why did the cereal have a cartoon tiger on it? And why did that tiger seem to have opinions about your child? Could you fry 4 eggs 4 different ways for 4 ungrateful people before dawn without losing your mind? And who, honestly, was saving all that bacon grease? And where did they think it was going? Congratulations! It is 1955, you are a brand new suburban housewife, and somewhere below you a family is about to wake up hungry. The floor is freezing, the house is asleep. Downstairs a percolator is waiting to be your only friend, and your husband's alarm has not even gone off yet. Breakfast, somehow, is already running late. Good luck. You wake before the alarm, because the alarm is set for your husband, and you are not permitted to need one. It is somewhere close to 5:30, long before the sun, and the house is dark and cold and completely silent, except for the sound of 4 other people sleeping soundly while you do not. You lie there for exactly 1 second, which is all the rest you are allotted, and then you swing your feet onto a cold floor. The day has a schedule, and the schedule started the moment your eyes opened. Breakfast is already, technically, running late. There is a particular cruelty to being the person the whole house depends on, and also the person nobody ever thinks to wake gently. Your husband has an alarm clock, a loud brass one, and it is set for him approximately 40 minutes from now. You have no such device. You have an internal clock, calibrated by years of quiet dread, that rouses you in the dark with the reliability of a rooster who has never once been thanked for it. You move through the bedroom without turning on a light, because a light would wake Walter. An awoken husband is a grumpy husband, and a grumpy husband is not a thing you wish to have created before the coffee has even started. You find your slippers by feel. You find your robe by feel. You know this house in the dark the way a safecracker knows a lock, except the only thing you are stealing is a few more seconds of your own quiet. Down the hall, the children are 2 warm lumps of pure denial, and they intend to stay that way as long as the laws of physics permit. The house itself seems to be in on the conspiracy. The floorboards are cold, the radiator has not kicked on, the windows are that particular shade of black that means the sun has not risen and would honestly resent the suggestion. The kitchen at this hour is roughly the temperature of a meat locker with ambitions. You come down the stairs and the cold meets you at the bottom like an unpaid bill. There is no heat yet, because heat is one more thing you are about to make, right alongside the coffee, the eggs, and the general illusion that this household runs itself. You stand for a moment in the dark. This is the closest thing to peace you are going to get, and it lasts about the length of one held breath. The clock on the wall ticks. The percolator sits cold on the stove, waiting like a patient dog. Outside, a milk truck grinds past, its bottles chattering together like a mouthful of nervous teeth. And then you begin, because that is the arrangement. Nobody signed anything. There was no meeting, but at some point it was decided, by everyone and by no one, that you would be the first one up and the last one to sit down. The engine that turns over before the rest of the machine so much as stirs. 2 doors down, Mrs. Voss is doing this exact thing, at this exact moment, in a kitchen laid out identically to yours, in a house stamped out by the same company from the same blueprint. So is the woman across the street. So are 10,000 women in 10,000 identical kitchens, all rising in the dark, all reaching for the same small stove light, a silent army nobody thought to put on a payroll. You are not tired. Exactly. You have moved past tired into a kind of functional trance, the state of someone who has done a thing so many times that the body performs it while the mind stays sleepy, annoyed, and resigned. Your hands know the way, your feet know where to stand. The coffee comes first. It always comes first. You reach for the percolator in the dark, and the day, whether it likes the idea or not, begins. Before you are allowed near the stove, you are required to deal with your own face. You sit at the small vanity in the half-dark and do your hair, and then you apply makeup, real makeup, at an hour when the only witness is a sleeping husband and a cat. The advice books are very clear about this. A wife does not appear at breakfast looking like a person who was asleep 4 minutes ago. You draw on the lipstick with the steady hand of someone who has done it in low light many times before. The logic here, if you follow it far enough, becomes genuinely strange. You are getting dressed up to fry bacon for people who are not awake and would not care. The audience for this performance is a man who will spend the meal behind a newspaper and 2 children whose highest aesthetic standard is whether the syrup pools correctly. And yet the rule stands, printed in magazines and murmured by your mother, that a husband should not have to look at an unfinished wife over his eggs. So you finish yourself first. You pin your hair, you powder, you find the lipstick in the drawer by touch, a confident coral you could apply in a coal mine. The mirror shows you a woman assembling herself in the dark, a portrait done in the wrong light for an exhibition no one will attend. The timing itself is quietly absurd. You are doing this before the coffee. You are, in effect, more presentable than conscious. Your reflexes are not fully online, but your eyeliner is flawless, because the culture has decided which of those 2 things matters more, and it did not pick the one about being awake. Miss Adelaide Hawley, the actress who plays Betty Crocker on the television, does her whole face for the cameras too, and gets paid for it, and gets to do it after a full night of sleep. You do the same face for free for the cast of a play no one is watching, on 4 hours of rest and a promise. The comparison does not hold up well, and you try not to make it too often. The compact clicks shut. That small sound is the sound of readiness, the starting gun of the whole morning. You look, for the record, lovely. You look like the drawing in the flower advertisement minus the flower, minus the smile, minus the small woodland creatures that seem to help her cook. The cat watches from the foot of the bed with the flat, a praising stare of a creature who has never once had to earn its breakfast. He does not do his hair. He does not powder his nose. He simply exists, is fed, and judges. You envy him with a purity that startles you a little. You stand and smooth the front of the dress, the one you pressed last night so it would be ready, because a fresh dress is also on the list of things a morning requires of you. Robe off, dress on, apron next. The transformation is nearly complete, and it happened in a room the colour of the inside of a closet. There is a version of you, in some other arrangement of the world, who stumbles into a kitchen with sleep in her eyes and yesterday's braid, and pours cereal into a bowl, and is loved exactly the same. You are aware of her the way you are aware of a rumour. She does not live in this house. This house came with a rule book, and the rule book opens with your face. Done. Powdered, painted, pinned, and presentable to a room full of sleeping people. You take one last look, blow out nothing because there is no candle, and turn toward the stairs. The face is ready. Now the rest of you has to catch up, and the rest of you has to make breakfast. You reach for the apron, and you tie it on over a dress you have already pressed, because appearing in the kitchen underdressed is its own quiet failure. The apron is not protection so much as a costume, the official garment of the role you are about to perform for the 10,000th time. You smooth it down. You check that the strings are even. Somewhere in a magazine, a drawing of a woman exactly like you is smiling in an apron exactly like this one, and she has never once burned the bacon. The apron hangs on a hook by the kitchen door, right where a butcher keeps his and a blacksmith keeps his, which tells you something about the kind of establishment you are actually running here. It is cotton, printed with tiny cherries, and it has been washed so many times it has gone soft, thin, and faded, the cherries themselves fading into a rumour of cherries. You have 3 of these. One is for company. This is not the company one. You loop it over your head and reach back to tie the strings, a blind ritual your fingers could perform in a coma. The bow lands in the same spot it always lands. There is a groove worn into the habit itself. If aprons kept service records, this one would be up for a pension and a small brass plaque. Let's talk about what the apron is for, officially, versus what it is for actually. Officially, it keeps grease off the dress. Actually, it announces a change of state, the way a judge's robe or a surgeon's gown does. Dress on. You are a woman. Apron on. You are the kitchen. The garment does the transformation, and you go along with it because there is bacon to render and no time to examine your own symbolism. The pocket on the front holds the morning's small tools, a book of matches for the stove, a stub of pencil for the grocery list, a hairpin in case the hair you just fixed decides to rebel. You pat the pocket. Everything is where it should be. The apron is a workbench you wear. The woman 2 doors down has an apron with a ruffle, a frilly, useless, beautiful thing worn specifically because it is impractical. The way a person wears good shoes to prove they do not have to run. You have seen it over the fence. You admire it the way you might admire a hat on a horse. It is lovely, and it has no business anywhere near a skillet. You glance down at yourself, fully assembled now. Pressed dress, faded cherries, even strings, painted face. You are, for all practical purposes, in uniform. If the government had thought to issue a medal for this, the ribbon would be printed with tiny cherries too, and it would be pinned on in a ceremony nobody attended, at an hour nobody was awake for. The apron settles against you, warm from the hook by the stove where the pilot light keeps a permanent low heat. It is the one warm thing in the room so far, and you are grateful for it in the specific, low way you are grateful for small mercies you did not ask for and cannot mention. There is a strange comfort in the costume, and you will not pretend otherwise. Tied in, you know what you are, and what comes next. The uncertainty of a whole complicated day narrows down to the very clear question of breakfast. And breakfast you can do. Breakfast you could do face down. So you tie the last knot, square your shoulders like a woman stepping onto a stage, and turn toward the cold stove and the waiting pan. The uniform is on. The curtain, such as it is, goes up. Your first and only critic will arrive in 40 minutes and immediately open a newspaper. The first real task of the morning is coffee, and coffee means the percolator. You fill the base with water, spoon grounds into the metal basket, and set the whole aluminum contraption onto the burner to begin its slow, gurgling performance. This is not a fast process, and it is not meant to be. The coffee has to be ready and hot the instant your husband sits down, which means you have to start it now, in the dark, before anything else is even close to happening. You watch the little glass knob on the lid, waiting for it to darken. The percolator is the closest thing this kitchen has to a heartbeat. Once it gets going, it makes a sound like a small, contented machine clearing its throat over and over, a rhythmic thup, thup, thup that means the day is officially underway. The house wakes to that sound the way a village wakes to a bell. It is the one voice in the morning that is allowed to speak before you do. You measure the Maxwell house by eye, because measuring cups are for people who have time. A heaping scoop per cup, plus 1 for the pot, an old rule you inherited from a mother who inherited it from hers. The grounds go into the perforated basket, the basket goes onto the little stem, and the whole assembly nests into the pot with a satisfying click, like a rifle being loaded, if a rifle fired only caffeine. Let's talk about the glass knob. It sits on the very top of the lid, a small clear dome, and inside it the coffee jumps up in little brown spurts as the pot heats. You watch it the way a sailor watches the sky. Pale spurts mean it is not ready. Dark spurts mean it is close. The colour rising in that knob is a language, and you are fluent, and it is the first thing all morning that answers you honestly. The pot does not hurry, and there is a lesson in that you do not have time to learn. Water boils, rises up the stem, rains down through the grounds, drips back, and does it all again, over and over, getting a shade darker each pass. It is the only thing in your life that improves by simply repeating itself in a loop. You wish you could say the same about the dishes. Dr. Ainsley, the family physician, says, 1 cup keeps you sharp and 3 make you jittery, and Walter drinks 4 before he has spoken a full sentence, so you do the arithmetic on his moods accordingly. You have learned to read a man by his coffee the way a farmer reads the weather. 2 cups down, he is human. 1 cup down, you keep the questions short and the toast plentiful. The smell arrives before the coffee does. It comes up out of the pot and fills the cold kitchen, warm, dark and bitter at the edges, and for a moment it makes the whole grim early hour almost bearable. It is a smell that has gotten more people out of bed than any alarm ever built. Even the cat, who cares for nothing, lifts his head at it. You keep the flame low because a percolator rushed is a percolator ruined, and burnt coffee is a sin he can detect from across a room. Patience here is not a virtue, it is a job requirement. So you stand and mind it, one hand on the counter, watching the knob go from amber to chestnut to something like the inside of an old boot. The first cup will be his. It is always his. But there is a private ceremony you allow yourself, a stolen pour into your own cup before the household descends, a single hot mouthful taken at the counter in the dark. It is the best minute of the day, and it lasts exactly 1 minute, and then the sun starts thinking about rising, and so do the children. The knob goes dark. The coffee is ready. The heartbeat is beating. Now everything else can begin. There is a jar of instant coffee in the cupboard, and you know exactly how fast it would be. A spoonful, hot water, done. You also know that you are not going to use it. Not for him, not on a weekday, because instant coffee carries a faint stink of not quite trying. You keep it for yourself, for the cup you drink standing up later, and for genuine emergencies. The percolator gets the real grounds and the real time, because the man of the house is understood to be able to taste the difference, or at least to believe he can. The jar sits at the back of the shelf, behind the good coffee, positioned like a secret. It is a squat brown jar with a foil seal, and it promises, right there on the label, a good cup in seconds. Seconds. The percolator takes the better part of 10 minutes and a constant vigil, and here is a jar offering to skip all of it. And you treat that offer the way you would treat a stranger offering candy. Because the shame is real, and the shame is silly, and both things are true at once. If your husband poured himself a cup and tasted the flat, thin ghost of instant, he would know. And he would not say anything cruel, and that would somehow be worse. He would just set the cup down with a small, disappointed patience, the look of a man whose wife has cut a corner she is not supposed to know exists. Consider who told you this was a corner. It was the same people who tell you everything. The advertisements and the neighbours and the small internal judge who never sleeps. The instant is not poison. Millions of people drink it happily, but somewhere it was decided that a devoted wife percolates, and an instant cup is the coffee equivalent of a store-bought cake at a bake sale, and you absorb that ruling without ever attending the trial, and yet you reach past the good jar and pull the instant one down, because this next cup is yours, and yours is allowed to be fast. You spoon the dark crystals into your own chipped cup, the one with the hairline crack you never mention, and you pour the hot water straight from the kettle, and it dissolves into something brown, passable, and honest. It tastes like a compromise. You have made worse ones. The grocer sets a whole shining pyramid of the instant by the register, and it sells. Oh, it sells, because everyone secretly wants the shortcut even as they publicly percolate. He winks when he rings it up, one conspirator to another. The whole country is quietly buying the thing the whole country pretends to be above. You drink your fast cup on your feet by the stove, and it does the job. The caffeine does not know it came from a jar. Your tired body does not file a complaint about authenticity. Only the culture cares, and the culture is not currently in the kitchen, and so for 90 seconds you and your slightly shameful cup have the place to yourselves. There is a kind of freedom in the thing you are allowed to do badly. Nobody is grading your coffee. You could drink it out of a boot. The performance is all pointed outward, at the table, at the man, at the children, and the small unwatched space behind you is where the corners get cut and the real rest gets taken. You rinse the chipped cup and set it in the rack before anyone comes down, evidence tidied, the jar returned to its hiding spot behind the good coffee. The percolator burbles on for the family. The instant waits in the dark for tomorrow's private minute. 2 coffees, 2 standards, 1 woman, keeping them carefully apart. Then you set the jar back, straighten the good coffee in front of it, and turn to the bacon. The audience is nearly awake. The real show has to look like it took all morning, because in every way that counts it did. You lay the bacon into a cold cast iron pan, because you have learned that starting it cold renders the fat properly, and the fat is the entire point. Nearby sits the grease can, a repurposed coffee tin with a permanent film of yesterday's bacon around the rim. You do not throw grease away. You pour it in here, where it joins the accumulated fat of every previous morning, and later you will fry the eggs and the potatoes, and possibly the whole rest of your life in it. The bacon begins to speak. You listen. The grease can is the oldest resident of this kitchen, ruling the back burner like a small greasy monarch. It predates the toaster. It has held that corner since some time before 1948, back when the stove was newer and so were you. It sits where the pilot light keeps it soft, a permanent fixture, a reservoir of every breakfast you have made, topped up and never fully emptied. If the house caught fire, the grease can would survive out of pure stubbornness. There is a philosophy in that can, though nobody would call it that. Nothing gets wasted. The fat that fried the bacon fries the eggs, and the fat that fried the eggs greases the pan for the potatoes, and the fat left over goes back in the can to wait its turn again. It is thrift as a religion practiced in a coffee tin, with you as the only priest and the stove as the altar. Let's talk about the smell, because the smell is the point too. Bacon in a cast iron pan is not a quiet event. The fat renders, the strips curl, and the whole cold kitchen fills with the single most persuasive aroma known to a sleeping household. It goes up the stairs like a rumour. It reaches the children before your voice does. Somewhere above you, a nose twitches in its sleep. The bacon spits, because bacon is greasy, fickle, and quick to punish a wandering eye. A drop of fat leaps out and catches the back of your hand, and you do not flinch, because your hands made their peace with the pan years ago. The freckle of a burn there, the pale line of one healed here, a private map of 1,000 breakfasts written on your skin. Mrs. Voss saves her grease in an actual store-bought grease keeper, a little ceramic thing with a strainer and a lid, a gift from her sister, and she is very proud of it and mentions it more than strictly necessary. You have a coffee can. It works exactly as well. You have decided not to feel anything about this, and mostly you succeed. You turn the strips with a fork, one at a time, moving the fast corners of the pan to the slow ones, managing the heat like a woman conducting a small, greasy orchestra. Too hot and the outsides scorch before the fat renders. Too cool and it steams into a sad, flabby thing no one wants. The pan has a sweet spot, and you find it by feel, the way you find everything here, in the dark, by feel. When the strips are done, you lift them onto a folded paper and tilt the pan, and the grease runs in a thin golden stream into the waiting can, joining the ancestors. The level rises a fraction. It will fall again by supper. It has been rising and falling like a tiny greasy tide for as long as you have lived here, and will go on long after anyone remembers why. The fat left in the pan is your cooking medium for everything that follows. You do not scrub it out. Scrubbing it out would be madness, would be waste, would be starting the next thing from scratch when the whole engine is already warm and running. The eggs will go straight into this. So you set the bacon aside to stay warm, keep the pan glistening on the heat, and reach for the eggs, because the reservoir is full and the next act needs the grease you just saved. The eggs are where the morning becomes a negotiation, because no two people in this house want them the same way. Your husband wants them over easy and will notice if the yolk breaks. The oldest child wants scrambled but not dry. The younger one wants them fried but is lying and will not eat them. You crack the first egg into the hot bacon grease and begin, essentially, running a short-order kitchen for a clientele of ingrates who tip in complaints. You keep a running mental order in your head, updated hourly, forever. The eggs come from the icebox a dozen at a time, and at 60 cents a dozen they are cheap enough that the average person in this country eats nearly 400 of them a year, which means you personally have cracked something like a small chicken civilization over the course of this marriage. You do not think about that number. If you thought about that number, you would have to sit down, and you are not allowed to sit down. Walter's egg is the diplomatic one. Over easy means you fry it, then flip it once, briefly, and the yolk must stay whole, a trembling gold coin under a veil of white. Break that yolk and you have not made breakfast, you have made an accusation. So you slide the spatula under with the delicacy of a jeweller, flip with a flick of the wrist honed over a decade, and the yolk survives, quivering and intact and quietly triumphant. Let's talk about the scrambled ones, which sound easy and are a trap. Scrambled but not dry is a window about 8 seconds wide. Pull them too early and they are wet and the child recoils. Leave them too long and they turn to rubber and the child recoils. You stand over the pan stirring softly, watching the curds form, and you lift them off at the exact half breath before done, because they keep cooking on the plate, a fact you know and the eggs know and no one else has ever once appreciated. The younger one's fried egg is a formality. He requested it. He will look at it, announce that he wanted it a different way than the way he asked for, and eat 2 bites of the white. You make it anyway, perfectly, because the alternative is a scene, and a scene at this hour is a luxury the schedule does not permit. His egg is a daily tax you pay to the god of keeping the peace. Into the same bacon grease they all go, which is the one mercy of the arrangement, because the fat is already hot and flavoured and forgiving. The eggs fry with a lacy brown edge that Walter pretends to disapprove of and secretly loves. The pan holds 2 at a time, maybe 3 if you angle them, so this is another line that runs in shifts. Another cue, another small factory floor you are managing single-handed with a fork. Grandma Pearl, who taught you, cracked eggs one-handed against the rim, a single confident tap and a twist, and you can do it too now, the shell opening clean without a single splinter dropping in. It is a small, useless and magnificent skill. Nobody at the table has any idea it is happening. They will notice only if a fragment of shell makes it through, at which point they will react as though you had served them gravel. You plate them in the order they will be eaten, hot ones last. The timing arranged so every person receives their egg at its peak, and nobody's goes cold waiting. This is a logistics problem that would defeat a shipping company. You solve it 4 times a morning without a chart. The last yolk holds. The last curd lands soft. You wipe the fork, set it down, and survey the little assembly line you just ran at dawn for people who will forget it happened before the plates are even cleared. 4 eggs, 4 ways, 0 thanks. And somehow, it is still only the beginning of the meal. Bacon has a doneness, and everyone in this house has an opinion about it, and none of the opinions agree. Your husband wants his crisp enough to snap. One child wants it chewy, which he calls soft, which you call underdone but serve anyway. You stand over the pan managing 3 different levels of crispness on a single strip of cast iron real estate, moving pieces around like a general repositioning troops. The bacon does not make this easy. It cooks at whatever speed it wants and browns unevenly out of what feels like spite. Crisp enough to snap is Walter's standard, and it is a demanding one. He likes to pick up a strip and break it in half with a clean, audible crack, the sound of a man whose bacon has met his expectations. Anything that bends instead of snaps he regards with the mild betrayal of a customer whose order was almost right. So his strips go to the hottest part of the pan and stay longest, cooked to the brink of what bacon can survive. The chewy child, meanwhile, wants his barely committed, the fat still soft, pale and translucent, a texture you privately find alarming and serve without comment, because that particular hill is not worth dying on before dawn. His strips come off early, limp and yielding, and he eats them happily, and you have long since stopped trying to convert him. Everyone is entitled to be wrong about their own bacon. Let's talk about the pan as territory. A cast iron skillet does not cook evenly. It has a raging hot center and cooler, gentler edges, and this happens to be useful, because it means you can run 3 doneness levels at once by simple geography. Crisp in the middle, chewy at the rim, medium in the borderlands. There are exactly 3 acceptable levels of doneness in this house, 1 per person, and no one will trade. You shuffle the strips between these zones like a woman playing a very greasy game of checkers against herself. The bacon fights you the whole time. It curls up at the ends and refuses to lie flat, so you press it down with the back of the fork, and it hisses and buckles and springs back the moment you let go, like a thing with strong feelings about being flattened. You have considered the little bacon press they sell now, and decided the fork and your patience will do, as always. Mr. Sorensen at the grocer sells it by the slab and by the package both, and he will cut it to whatever thickness you like, and thickness changes everything, which is one more variable in an equation with too many already. Thick cut takes longer and stays chewier. Thin cut crisps in a blink and burns in the blink after. You buy the middle thickness, the diplomatic one, and manage the rest by hand. There is a narrow, unforgiving window between perfectly crisp and scorched to carbon, and it slams shut without warning. Turn your back to flip an egg, and the strip you left in the hot center goes from golden to a black, curled ruin that smokes its confession into the air. Then you scrape it into the grease can, say nothing, and start another, because Walter will count his strips and notice a shortfall. You lay the finished bacon on a folded paper to drain, sorted into little rows by doneness, an arrangement only you can read. Crisp on the left for the man, soft on the right for the boy. The negotiated middle in between for everyone with the sense to not have strong opinions about a pig at dawn. And the strange thing is, you have no opinion of your own. You would eat any of it, any doneness, standing up cold gratefully. Somewhere in the years of cooking bacon to other people's exact specifications, your own preference quietly packed a bag and left, and you have not missed it. The rows are ready, the doneness is sorted. You wipe the fork again and turn to the toast, leaving the bacon to rest in its careful, unappreciated order. The toaster can only handle 2 slices at a time, and there are 4 people who want toast, which means the toast is a factory line that runs behind everything else. You feed in the Wonder Bread, wait, catch the slices as they pop, and start buttering while the next two are already going down. Toast has a cruel property. It must be hot when it reaches the plate, which means it must be made last, which means it fights every other item on the stove for your attention. You develop a rhythm. The rhythm never quite keeps up. The toaster is a proud chrome toastmaster, gleaming, modern, and capable of exactly 2 slices at a time, a limit that feels less like an engineering fact than a personal insult. 2. In a house of 4, the math has never once worked out in your favour, and yet there the machine sits, smug and shining, doing half the job and looking wonderful while it fails to do the other half. Wonder Bread goes in, soft and white, and so uniform it might have been printed rather than baked. It is fortified with vitamins, the wrapper insists, as though vitamins were the reason anyone ever wanted toast. You feed the slices down into the slots and press the lever, and the little coils inside glow orange, and now you wait, except you never actually wait, because waiting is not a thing this morning offers. The pop is its own small event. The toaster launches its finished slices with a startling metallic thunk, always at the exact moment your hands are somewhere else, elbow deep in an egg or a lunchbox. You lunge for the slices before they cool, because cold toast is a quiet tragedy and a reheated slice is worse, a leathery apology of a thing. You have the reflexes of a shortstop now, from years of fielding toast. Buttering is its own assembly step, and it has to happen while the slice is hot enough to melt the butter into it, which is a window measured in seconds. You have a knife going and a stack building, and you spread fast and even, edge to edge, because Walter notices a dry corner the way an inspector notices a crack in a beam. A properly buttered slice, fully saturated, glistening, is a small daily masterpiece nobody will ever frame. Young Ronnie likes his cut into triangles. His sister likes hers cut into rectangles and considers triangles childish and will send a triangle back. So you cut the same toast 2 different shapes for 2 children 18 months apart, because the shape of the toast is, apparently, a matter of profound personal identity, and it is easier to cut a diagonal than to argue about it before dawn. The stack grows on a plate by the toaster, and it fights the clock, because a stack of toast cools from the outside in, and a morning has a way of running long. You cover it loosely with a napkin to hold the heat, a trick from your mother, who held toast under a folded cloth like a woman keeping a bird warm. It buys you a few minutes. It never buys you enough. And still, the toaster only does 2 at a time, so the line runs and runs, pop and butter and cut and stack, a rhythm you could do in your sleep and frequently nearly do. 4 people, 2 slots, 1 woman, and a machine that gleams like it is helping while it quietly holds the whole breakfast hostage. The last slices pop. You butter them, cut them, both shapes, and add them to the covered stack just as the eggs come off the pan. For one moment everything is hot at once, the toast and the eggs and the bacon all peaking together, a synchronization that will last about as long as it takes everyone to sit down. You carry the stack to the table under its napkin, and you do not think about the fact that you will run this exact chrome relay again tomorrow. You just set it down and turn back for the juice. If it is butter, you are lucky, and you simply cut it. If it is margarine, and money being what it often is, then you have a chore. The margarine comes as a white block with a small packet of orange dye, because the butter people made sure of that, and you have to knead the colour in yourself. You squeeze and fold and work the pale block in its bag until it turns a convincing yellow, a small daily act of making something pretend to be something else, which is a skill this whole morning quietly requires. The block arrives the colour of lard, the colour of a candle, the colour of absolutely nothing anyone wants to spread on toast. This is not an accident. The dairy states fought a long, strange war to keep margarine from being sold already coloured, so that it would look unappetizing on the shelf and you would buy the real butter instead. They lost, mostly, but the compromise lingers, a white block and a little pod of dye, and the colouring left as a chore for you, so you become the last worker on an assembly line that ends in your own hands. You snap the dye capsule inside the sealed bag and begin to knead, squeezing the colour through the pale fat, folding it over on itself, working the streaks of deep orange into the white until the whole thing goes an even, buttery yellow. It is genuinely satisfying, in the way that mixing paint is satisfying, and genuinely absurd, in the way that being handed a home chemistry set to fake butter at dawn is absurd. Consider who actually won this long, petty and agricultural argument. The butter lobby wanted margarine to look like sad wax. The margarine company wanted it to look like butter. And the resolution, hammered out in state legislatures by men in suits, was that you, personally, standing in your kitchen before sunrise, would perform the colouring by hand. Two industries fought a war, and the losing side's punishment landed squarely on the housewife, as these things reliably do. The bag is cold from the icebox, and your fingers go a little numb as you work it, but the fat softens under the pressure and the colour spreads, streak by streak, until the last white marble of it surrenders, and the whole block glows the confident gold of something that has never been within a mile of a cow. You hold it up to the little stove light, convincing. It would fool a jury. It has fooled this family for years. The neighbour who can afford it refuses margarine on principle, buys only butter, and mentions this at every possible opportunity, the way a person mentions any small expense they can afford and you cannot. You let it pass. Butter is better, and everyone knows it. And margarine is what the budget allows this week, and the block you just coloured will taste close enough on hot toast that no child will file a complaint. That is the whole ambition, close enough. There is a quiet philosophy hiding in the block, and you try not to look directly at it. So much of the morning is exactly this: making the affordable thing look like the expensive thing, making the tired woman look rested, making the frozen juice look fresh. The margarine is just the most literal example, the one that stains your fingertips faintly orange as proof. You cut a corner off the finished block and drop it into the little dish for the table, and it sits there golden and innocent, giving away nothing about its white and shameful origins. The rest goes back in the icebox for tomorrow, when you will not have to colour it again. One small mercy of buying the block ahead. Your fingertips have a faint orange tint now that a quick rinse will not fully take. You will carry it through the morning, a little dye under the nails. You dry your hands, spread a test corner on the heel of a toast slice, and taste it. Fine. Close enough. You turn to the juice. The orange juice does not come from oranges, exactly. It comes from a small frozen cylinder in a can, and your job is to turn it back into a drink. You pry off the lid, thwack the frozen concentrate out into a glass pitcher, add 3 cans of cold water, and stir until the slush breaks up and surrenders. This is considered a modern miracle, and in fairness, it is faster than reaming 24 oranges by hand. You stir out the last stubborn frozen lump and set the pitcher on the table, vitamins and all. The can lives in the freezer compartment, a little frost-coated cylinder of Minute Maid, and getting it out is a small polar expedition. You run it under the tap for a second to loosen the frozen plug inside, then pry the metal lid and push the whole orange column out into the pitcher, where it lands with a wet, unlovely thud, a thing roughly the size of a fist, shaped like a candle somebody sat on. Then the arithmetic. 1 can of concentrate, 3 cans of water, a ratio you could recite in a dead faint. You fill the empty can from the tap 3 times, pouring each one over the frozen block, and take up the long spoon. The concentrate does not want to dissolve. It clings to itself in a stubborn orange fist, and you have to chase the last lump around the pitcher and press it against the glass until it finally gives up and blooms into the water. The miracle of it is genuine, however silly. A generation ago, orange juice meant a woman at the counter grinding halved oranges over a glass reamer, one at a time, for 20 minutes to fill a single pitcher. Now it lives in the freezer and reconstitutes in 90 seconds. It is, if you squint, a meal kit that arrives frozen and finishes in your hands, and it changed the American morning without anyone quite noticing. They even got Mr. Bing Crosby to sing about it on the radio, crooning about frozen orange juice between songs like it was a love affair, and it worked, because if the voice that sang about a white Christmas tells you to defrost your juice, you defrost your juice. You have never met him. He has, in a sense, been in your kitchen every morning for years, selling you the can you are currently wrestling. The children like it because it is sweet and cold and they do not care where it came from, which is the correct attitude toward orange juice and possibly toward most things. Walter likes it because the doctor and the advertisement both say it is full of vitamin C, and a man wants to believe his breakfast is defending him against something. The juice obliges. It is bright, it is orange, it is armoured in health claims. You pour a first tall glass and hold it to the little stove light, and it glows the exact confident orange of a thing that wants very much to be taken for fresh. Close enough? Again. The whole morning is a series of things that are close enough, and the juice is just the cheerful, citrus-faced example. There is pulp, or there is not, depending on the can, and this too is a matter of fierce household opinion that you have long since stopped mediating. One child wants pulp. One child regards pulp as a personal attack. You buy the smooth kind and let the pulp faction file its grievance quietly, because you cannot reconstitute two different pitchers before dawn and remain a functioning person. You stir once more for good measure, watching the last pale swirl of undissolved concentrate vanish into uniform orange, and you set the pitcher in the center of the table where small hands can reach it. Cold, bright, sweet, and technically nutritious. The empty can goes in the bin, one more thing summoned out of the freezer and made to look like the sun. For the adults, and for the idea of watching one's figure, there is grapefruit. You halve one, and then you do the small, careful work of loosening each segment with a serrated grapefruit spoon, a utensil that exists for this one job and no other. You sprinkle sugar on top because a grapefruit alone is a punishment nobody actually wants. It sits in its own little dish, faintly sophisticated, faintly medicinal, the breakfast course that suggests restraint while the bacon quietly renders 3 feet away. You set out 2 of them and hope somebody eats them. The grapefruit is the most aspirational object on the table, and it knows it. It is what slim women in the magazines eat, poised and radiant, half a grapefruit and black coffee, a breakfast that photographs beautifully and satisfies absolutely no one. You put it out because the magazines put it out, an edible advertisement for a discipline the rest of the meal cheerfully ignores. Halving it is easy. The real labour is the sectioning, the patient run of the little serrated spoon around each membrane, freeing every segment so it can be lifted out clean without a fight. This is fussy, thankless work, the culinary equivalent of untangling a necklace. And you do it because a grapefruit you have to dig at is a grapefruit that squirts you in the eye, and one household casualty before dawn is enough. The little spoon is narrow, serrated, and useless at everything else. It is a spoon with teeth, a tiny serrated shovel, and it does exactly one thing in this world. It eats grapefruit. It cannot stir coffee. It lives in the drawer for its single specialized purpose, brought out at grapefruit hour and put back, the most narrowly employed object you own, like a specialist surgeon who only operates on one knuckle. Then the sugar, because here is the quiet joke of the whole enterprise. You put out the grapefruit as the virtuous choice, the light and healthful alternative to the bacon, and then you spoon sugar over the top until it is sweet enough to actually swallow. The health food requires a coat of sugar to be tolerable, which tells you most of what you need to know about health food. You dust it on with the resigned honesty of someone who has stopped pretending grapefruit is a treat. Mrs. Voss swears by it, claims she has half a grapefruit every single morning and nothing else, and looks it and mentions it, the way the disciplined always find a way to mention their discipline. You nod. You privately note that she also keeps a tin of shortbread in her pantry that empties suspiciously fast. Everyone has a grapefruit face and a shortbread truth, and you are not one to judge, having your own cold toast eaten standing up. At your table, the grapefruit is a gamble that usually loses. Walter regards it as rabbit food and reaches straight past it for the bacon. The children consider it sour and suspicious. It sits there in its little dish, sectioned and sugared and lovely, a small monument to good intentions, and more often than not you are the one who eventually eats it, standing up, because you cannot bear to see the careful work of that spoon go to waste. There is something almost tender about the grapefruit, the way it tries. It sits among the bacon and the buttered toast and the sweet cereal, all the things people actually want, and offers itself up as the sensible option, and gets passed over morning after morning. You feel a kinship with it. You too are on the table doing the responsible thing while everyone reaches for something easier. Still, you put it out, because putting it out is part of the picture, and the picture matters even when the grapefruit does not get eaten. 2 halves, sectioned clean, sugared just enough, sitting pretty in their dishes. You give the little spoon a final wipe, set it beside the dish for whoever might, against the odds, use it, and turn back to the crowded, unhealthy, beloved centre of the table. The children do not want eggs. The children want cereal, specifically the cereal with the cartoon animal on the box, and they have wanted it loudly since the last commercial break. You keep the boxes lined up in the cupboard, a small gallery of tigers and elves and impossibly cheerful mascots all staring out and promising sugar. You reach for the one that is currently in favor, knowing the favor will shift by Thursday. Pouring a bowl of cereal is the one part of this breakfast that requires no cooking, which is precisely why the children treat it as the good part. The cupboard shelf is a parade of characters, each one engineered in a laboratory of persuasion to appeal to a person under 4 feet tall. There is the tiger who insists the flakes are great, drawing out the word into a growl your son now performs at the table. There are the 3 little elves attached to the puffed rice, and the box that snaps and crackles and pops, sounds a cereal has no business making and yet, weirdly, delivers. You stand before this lineup like a woman choosing a jury, except the jury has already been bought, because the choice was made in the living room hours ago by a television set doing the actual parenting. Your son saw the tiger on the cartoons, and now the tiger is the only acceptable cereal, and this will remain true with the force of law until a new mascot dethrones the old one, probably by Thursday, probably during another cartoon. The sugar is the open secret of the whole aisle, sweet, heavy and shameless. These are not the plain flakes of your own childhood. These are frosted, coated, candied, sweetened until they are essentially dessert wearing a nutrition label, and the children can taste the difference from across a room. You pour the bowl and the sugar dust settles at the bottom, and they will drink that sweetened milk at the end like it is the prize for finishing. Mr. Kellogg and his rivals understand your children better than you do, which is a humbling thing to admit before dawn. They have studied the small, demanding creatures and built boxes precisely calibrated to make them point and shout in a grocery aisle. You are merely the woman with the cart and the wallet, standing between the tiger and its target, losing. The genius of the cereal, the pure evil genius of it, is that it requires nothing of you. You pour it. You add the milk. That is the recipe, the whole recipe, and there is no pan and no grease and no doneness to negotiate, which is exactly why the children prize it, and exactly why some tired part of you is grateful for it. On the mornings that are coming apart, the tiger is a friend. He asks nothing. He simply pours. Your daughter, older and wiser and 8, has started to feel she is above the mascots and requests a plainer cereal to signal her sophistication, then eats 3 spoonfuls of her brother's frosted one when she thinks no one is watching. You watch. You say nothing. Growing up is largely a matter of pretending you no longer want the sugary thing while continuing, in secret, to want the sugary thing. The bowls come down from the shelf, the good ones with the blue rings, and you set them out and let the children do the pouring, because pouring is the part they fight to do, the small autonomy of tipping the box themselves. Cereal thunders into the bowl, too much of it, a small avalanche you will quietly redistribute, and the milk goes on top, and for a moment the demanding creatures are silent, chewing, content. You lean against the counter and watch them eat the breakfast that a cartoon sold them and you merely served, and you feel the specific mixed feeling of it, the small defeat and the smaller relief. The tiger got what he wanted. So, briefly, did the children. And you got 90 seconds when nobody needed anything cooked, which, this morning, counts as a victory. There is a reason the children fight over who gets to pour the cereal, and the reason is buried somewhere in the box under the flakes. Inside is a prize, a small plastic something, and getting to it is a full contact sport at the breakfast table. Beyond the box there is the other campaign, the one on the back panel, offering a decoder ring or a toy submarine for a certain number of box tops, and a dime mailed to an address in a faraway state. You have already been asked to save the box tops. You are always saving the box tops. The prize inside is the true product, and the cereal is merely the packaging it travels in. Everyone at the table knows this, including you. Somewhere in that box, buried to maximize the digging, is a little molded figurine or a tin whistle or a plastic ring that glows, and the children will excavate the entire box to reach it, hands plunging in past the wrist, flakes cascading onto the table like the tailings of a frantic mine. You have tried, over the years, every method of managing the excavation. You have poured the box out to retrieve the prize in advance, which caused a betrayal you never risked again. You have decreed that whoever finds it keeps it, which caused a war. Now you simply let the mining proceed and sweep up the fallout, because some forces are larger than a mother, and the desire for the plastic ring is one of them. The back of the box is where the real operation lives, printed bright, bold, and irresistible to anyone under 10. There, in bright ink, is the offer. Send in 2 box tops and a dime, and in 6 to 8 weeks a genuine decoder ring, or a submarine that runs on baking soda, will arrive at your door, addressed to a child, from a company in a state you will never visit. 6 to 8 weeks. A child has no concept of 6 to 8 weeks. To a child that is a geological age, and they will ask about it daily for all of it. So you cut the box tops and you keep them in a drawer, a growing horde of cardboard rectangles, currency and economy run entirely by cereal companies to keep you buying cereal. You need 2 or 4 or 6, which means more boxes, which means more cereal, which is the entire point, the loop closing neatly around your grocery budget. The prize is free. You just have to buy your way to it, one box at a time. When the day finally comes and the little package arrives, it is always, without exception, smaller and flimsier than the picture promised. The submarine is an inch of cheap plastic that sinks more than it dives, and yet the joy on the small face receiving it is total and real, and you cannot point out the gap between the advertisement and the object, because you spend your whole morning living in that gap yourself. Young Ronnie has been waiting 11 days for a spy ring, a fact he reports each morning like a prisoner marking the wall, and the wait by the mailbox has become its own ritual. The waiting, you have come to suspect, is most of the pleasure. The ring, when it comes, will be a disappointment. The weeks of imagining it will not. The children finish digging, the prize is retrieved and briefly contested and confiscated and returned, and the flakes that landed on the table get swept into your palm and, honestly, back into the box, because you were raised to waste nothing. The box goes back on the shelf, lighter now, one prize poorer, one step closer to the next box top. You wipe the table where the mine collapsed, add the box top to the drawer hoard, and think the whole cereal aisle is a machine for turning a child's want into your recurring purchase. Then a small hand tugs your apron to show you the ring, and you admire it, because that part, at least, is not a trick. Some mornings you do not have it in you to make pancakes from scratch, and on those mornings there is Bisquick. You scoop the mix, add milk and an egg, stir until it is roughly a batter, and ladle it onto the griddle, and nobody at the table is any the wiser. This is a small act of survival dressed up as a choice. The box promises you can make pancakes, biscuits, and waffles, and it is telling the truth, which is more than most things in this kitchen do. You flip the first one. It is fine. Fine is enough today. The box has lived in the cupboard since before you can remember. A reliable rectangle of powder that asks almost nothing of you and gives back a passable pancake in exchange. From scratch, a pancake wants flour and baking powder and sugar and salt, measured and sifted and combined, a chemistry lesson before dawn. Bisquick wants milk and an egg and a spoon. On a good morning, you scorn it. On a bad morning, you could kiss it. And this is a bad morning, the specific quiet kind, where you slept 4 hours and the alarm felt like an assault. So you reach for the box, and the reaching feels like both a defeat and a rescue at the same time, which is the exact feeling the box was designed to deliver. You are not failing. You are being efficient. You repeat this to yourself over the mixing bowl until it nearly takes. The guilt arrives right on schedule, uninvited, the way it always does. Somewhere a magazine is implying that a devoted wife makes her pancakes from the raw flour up, and somewhere your own mother's voice is agreeing, and the two of them sit on your shoulder while you stir the mix and murmur that this is a shortcut, that shortcuts are for lesser women, that the family deserves scratch. You stir harder, the voices are wrong, and you know they are wrong, and they persist anyway. The batter comes together in under a minute, lumpy and forgiving, and you ladle rounds onto the hot griddle where they spread and bubble and set. And here is the truth nobody in the magazines will admit. They are good. They are light and golden, and the children pour syrup on them and eat them without a single complaint, and no human being alive could tell them from scratch at this hour with syrup in the way. The box did not lie. The box came through. Mr. George, the man on the radio who reads the recipes, once said the mix was invented by a railroad chef who mixed the dry ingredients ahead so he could serve fresh biscuits fast on a moving train, and you think of him fondly every time you scoop it. A fellow professional who understood that speed is sometimes the whole art of a good breakfast. Whoever he was, he saved you 100 mornings. A deeper permission hides in the box, and on the bad mornings you let yourself take it. The permission says that the love in a breakfast is not measured in the difficulty of making it. The children do not eat effort. They eat pancakes, and a pancake from a box, served warm by a mother who is barely upright, carries every bit as much care as one built from scratch, by a woman with something to prove. You flip the last round, stack them steaming on the plate, and dust the guilt off your shoulder along with the flour. The griddle did its work, the box did its work. You did yours, which today meant knowing when to reach for help and taking it without apology, a skill harder than any recipe. The stack goes to the table and vanishes under syrup, and the empty bowl goes in the sink, and you fold the Bisquick box closed and slide it back onto the shelf, ready for the next morning that comes apart. It waits there, patient, undemanding, a small cardboard mercy you are done being ashamed of. Part of breakfast assembled itself overnight, on the porch, in glass bottles. The milkman came before you were up and left the milk, and if you look at a bottle you can see the cream has risen to the neck, thick and separate, waiting to be poured off for the coffee. You bring the bottles in from the cold step, cradling them like something that might escape. The milk is part of the arrangement of the whole morning, delivered on a standing order you never have to think about, which is a rare and beautiful thing on a morning made almost entirely of things you must think about. Mr. Delgado sets the bottles on this porch before you wake, and has done since before you moved in, a quiet figure who works in the dark hours and is gone before the sun, like a benevolent burglar who breaks in only to leave things. You have met him perhaps 4 times in as many years. He knows your order better than your husband knows your birthday. 3 quarts, extra on Fridays, cottage cheese when you leave the note. You open the door to the cold and there they stand in the metal box, the bottles beaded with frost, capped with little foil hats, arranged in a neat glass row. It is the one delivery in your life that requires nothing of you, no signing, no waiting, no answering the door in your apron. The milk simply appears, the way you wish the rest of breakfast would. The cream is the small daily prize, and it is thick, pale, and faintly decadent. The milk is not homogenized, which means it separates in the bottle overnight, and the cream floats to the top and sits there in the neck, a thick pale plug of the richest part. You pour it off carefully into a little pitcher for the coffee, or you save it for whipping, and the skim beneath goes to the children. The bottle sorts itself into luxury and everyday, and you get to decide who gets which. The frozen mornings have their own small trick, when the milk half freezes on the step and pushes its own cream up out of the bottle in a rising column. Lifting the foil cap on a little tower of frozen cream like the milk is tipping its hat to you, the children love this. They race to the door on the cold mornings to see if the milk has grown its frozen crown, and it is, you will admit, one of the genuinely delightful things about the whole enterprise. Mr. Delgado's arrangement is the original of a kind of convenience that feels almost magical. You want a thing regularly, so a man simply brings it, regularly, without being asked each time, and bills you at the end of the month. It is subscribing to milk. It is the one corner of your provisioning that runs on trust and habit instead of a cart and a wallet. And you treasure it because it is the one thing you do not have to manage. You set the cold bottles on the counter and peel the foil from the first, and pour the cream into the pitcher, and the whole small ceremony takes under a minute and delivers the single most effortless ingredient of the morning, everything else you had to make. The milk you merely had to carry in from the cold, already perfect, already yours. Someday the supermarkets will sell milk cheaper and Mr. Delgado will stop coming, and a small good thing will quietly vanish from the mornings. You do not dwell on it. For now the bottles still appear on the step in the dark, and the cream still rises to the neck, and a man you barely know still leaves you the easiest part of breakfast while you sleep. You rinse the empties and set them back out on the step for him to collect, the glass ready to make its round trip again, and you carry the full ones to the icebox. Cream skimmed, order filled, one part of the morning that took care of itself. Before anyone comes down, you set the table, because a breakfast that is merely cooked is not yet a breakfast. You lay out the plates and the saucers and the coffee cups, the juice glasses, the folded napkins, the salt and pepper, the sugar bowl, and the little cream pitcher. Everything has a place, and you know all the places by heart. This is staging, pure and simple. The arrangement of props for a scene that has to look effortless when the audience walks in. You step back and check it. A fork is crooked. You fix the fork. The table is your stage, and you dress it the way a stagehand dresses a set, from memory, in the dark, before the house lights come up. The plates go down first, one at each seat, warmed on the radiator if you had the foresight and it was working. Then the flatware, fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right, an arrangement no one at this table would notice if it were correct and everyone would somehow sense if it were wrong. The cups and saucers come next, handles all turned the same way, a private uniformity that pleases you privately and serves no function whatsoever. The juice glasses, the water glasses if it is that kind of morning, the napkins folded into neat triangles you crease with a fingernail. You are not decorating. You are, in some quiet way, building the evidence that this household is orderly and cared for and running exactly as it should. Consider who all this careful, pointless, and beautiful arranging is really for. It is not for the children, who would eat off the floor and be perfectly happy. It is not really for Walter, who will not consciously register a single fork. It is for the picture, the same picture the magazines print, where the family gathers at a beautifully set table and everything is calm and lovely and unmistakably the work of a competent woman. You set that picture every morning, and every morning it is dismantled within 20 minutes. The sugar bowl and the cream pitcher go to the centre, the little matched pair from the wedding china, the nicest things on the table, and the ones most likely to be knocked over by a reaching child. You place them just out of the danger zone, a calculation you make without thinking, the geometry of a mother who has watched many things get knocked over. The salt and pepper flank them like small sentries. Your own mother set a table like this every day of her married life, and hers before her, an unbroken line of women arranging plates in the dark, and you feel them at your shoulder as you work. A whole quiet lineage of table setters passing the habit down like a family recipe. You do it their way. You will, you suspect, teach your daughter the same, fork on the left, handles turned the same way, whether she thanks you for it or not. You step back and survey the finished stage. It is, for this one held moment before the family descends, perfect. The cloth is smooth, the settings are square, the sugar catches the little stove light. It looks exactly like the drawing in the advertisement, and it will stay that way for approximately as long as it takes the first person to sit down and reach for something. A fork, you notice, has drifted a 1/4 inch out of true. You cross the room and nudge it back into line, because the 1/4 inch matters to no one but you, and you are the only one awake, and a thing worth doing is worth doing even when the only witness is the woman who did it. The fork lies straight. The stage is dressed. Then you hear the first footstep on the stairs above, the day's audience beginning to stir, and you take one last look at your perfect, doomed table, and you turn toward the stairs to go raise the curtain and wake the players who are about to walk on and quietly wreck the set you built for them. Now you have to wake the children, which is a job with a very different physics than waking yourself. They do not swing their feet onto a cold floor, they burrow. You go up and pull back covers and turn on lights and say names in the escalating tone that every mother develops, and eventually 2 small people are upright and swaying and furious about it. You steer them toward washing and dressing while breakfast holds on the stove, getting no better for the wait. Every minute they take is a minute the eggs spend turning rubbery. You say the names again. Waking yourself was a single silent decision in the dark. Waking the children is a campaign, with stages and setbacks, and a resistance that regroups the moment your back is turned. You open the door and the warm sleep smell of them rolls out, and there they are, 2 lumps burrowed so deep in the blankets that you have to conduct a brief search to locate a face. You start gently. Gentleness lasts about 11 seconds. Ronnie is the burrower. He responds to being woken by disappearing further, pulling the covers over his head with the strategic instinct of an animal denying that winter has come. You peel the blanket back and he retrieves it. You peel it back again. This can go several rounds. A slow tug of war conducted before dawn, until you deploy the escalating voice, the one that starts as a song and ends as a warning. Your daughter wakes differently, all at once and offended, sitting up like a woman personally betrayed by the morning. She is 8 and has opinions about the injustice of school, of sunrise, of brothers, of the specific socks you laid out. You do not engage. You have a breakfast cooling downstairs and a narrow window, and philosophy can wait until she is at least wearing the socks she objects to. The window is closing, and the children are slow, groggy, and completely unbothered by it. Every minute the children spend swaying and negotiating is a minute the eggs firm up, the toast cools under its napkin, the whole carefully timed meal drifts past its peak. You built a breakfast to be eaten at a precise moment, and that moment is arriving whether or not 2 children can locate their shoes. And they cannot. They never can. The shoes vanish nightly into a dimension only children can access. So you become a sheepdog. You do not carry the children. You steer them, a hand on a narrow back, a word, a redirect, herding them from bed toward the bathroom, toward the clothes, toward the stairs, correcting their drift the way a dog corrects a wandering flock, without ever quite touching. Wash your face. Real washing, with water. Yes, now. The socks are on the chair. On the chair. Behind you. There. Miss Abernathy stands at her classroom door and does not tolerate lateness, and the bus does not wait, and both of these facts sit on your shoulders as you conduct the great daily migration of two reluctant people down one flight of stairs. The bus has a schedule. The bus has never once cared that a small boy could not find the shoe that was on his foot yesterday and is now, apparently, gone forever. Eventually, through a process that feels each morning like it should not possibly work, and each morning somehow does, the children are vertical and mostly clothed and moving in the general direction of the table. It is a small logistical miracle performed daily by a woman with no title and no training, the safe delivery of two half-asleep children to two chairs before a cooling breakfast. You get them to the top of the stairs and point them down toward the food, and they descend in the stumbling, complaining, half-dressed way of all children everywhere, and you follow behind, herding to the last, already calculating how much the eggs have suffered and whether the toast can be saved. The players are on their way to the stage. Late, as always, vertical at last. Your husband comes down dressed for the office, and his plate is the plate the whole operation has been building toward. He is the breadwinner, and breakfast is his fuel, and so his eggs are the ones that must be perfect, his coffee the one that must be hot and waiting. You set it in front of him first, before the children, before yourself, because that is the order of things, and the order is not up for discussion. He says good morning, or he says nothing, and picks up his fork, and you are already turning back to the stove for the next thing. He arrives fully assembled, Walter does, in his pressed shirt and his knotted tie, a man ready for the world, having done nothing this morning but shower and dress while a whole breakfast materialized beneath him. This is not laziness. This is the arrangement struck by the entire era. He goes out and earns the money, and you produce the eggs that send him out to do it. His job starts at 9. Yours started at 5:30. His plate is the crown jewel of the morning's work, and you set it down with a private flourish only you appreciate. The over-easy eggs, yolks intact, the bacon at his exact snap, the toast buttered to the edge, the coffee, real and percolated, at his right hand. It is a good plate. It is, honestly, a quiet work of craft, and it will be eaten in 11 minutes by a man reaching for the newspaper with his other hand. The order of service is the whole quiet story, and it is fixed, unspoken, and never once questioned. He is fed first, not the children, who are hungrier and louder, not you who made all of it. Him, the breadwinner, eats first and eats best, and this is so deeply the rule that no one ever says it aloud. It simply happens, morning after morning, his plate landing before anyone else's as reliably as the sun that has finally started to come up outside. You do not resent him, exactly. He is a decent man who works hard at a job he does not love to keep this house standing, and he has never once been cruel about his eggs. But the arrangement is the arrangement, and the arrangement says his comfort is the morning's purpose and your labour is the morning's engine, and some mornings you feel the weight of that distribution more than others. He eats efficiently, a working man's breakfast, fuel taken on the way to somewhere. He does not linger over it or praise it or seem to notice it much at all, which is its own kind of compliment, the compliment of a thing so reliable it has become invisible. A breakfast noticed is a breakfast that went wrong. Your best work is the work that vanishes without comment, absorbed, taken for granted, gone. Mr. Bernays, the advertising man, is the one who convinced the whole country that a man needs a heavy breakfast to face his day, sold it through doctors decades ago, and here is the living result. Sitting at your table, forking up the eggs that a marketing campaign taught him to want. He does not know he is the punchline of an old advertisement. He just knows he is hungry in the morning, the way he was told to be. You refill his coffee before he asks, reading the level in his cup the way you read everything about him, and he nods, or grunts, a small acknowledgement that lands somewhere warm in you despite yourself. It is not much. It is a nod over eggs. But you built the whole morning partly to earn it, and on a good day it comes, and it is enough to keep you moving. So you return to the pan, his plate handled, his fuel delivered, and you start the children's eggs, the second shift of a job that runs in shifts, while the breadwinner eats the best plate in the house at the head of the table you set for him. Once your husband is seated and fed, he opens the newspaper, and the newspaper goes up like a wall between him and the rest of the table. You conduct the remainder of breakfast around this barrier, refilling his coffee by reaching past the sports section, answering questions that get clipped one-word replies from behind the front page. The paper is enormous, 3 feet of it, and he disappears into it completely. You have learned to interpret the small sounds he makes, the grunts and the paper rustles, as a kind of weather report on his mood. Today's forecast is neutral. You take what you can get. The newspaper is the most reliable guest at the table and the least sociable. It arrives every morning, thick and grey, and Walter opens it the moment his plate is in front of him, unfolding it to full sail like a ship-raising canvas, and behind it he goes, gone, present in body and absent in every other respect. You are left addressing a wall of newsprint that could rent itself out as a room divider, a familiar man's hands emerging from the bottom of it to locate the coffee. You have made your peace with the wall, mostly. It is not personal. It is simply what men at breakfast do in this era, arming themselves with box scores and headlines before the commute. Every dining room on the block has one, a father folded into a paper, a family arranging itself around his temporary absence. You are not being ignored so much as ritually excluded, which is a fine distinction that does not always feel fine. The small sounds are how you two communicate now. A short grunt means agreement, or at least no objection. A longer exhale through the nose means something in the news has displeased him. A sharp rustle and refold means he has finished one section and moved to the next, and is not, whatever you are saying, listening. You have become a scholar of these noises, fluent in a language with no words, reading his morning mood off the acoustics of newsprint. You pass a question over the top of the paper and it drops into the void and comes back, sometimes as a single syllable. Do you want more toast? Will you be late tonight? Maybe. It is not a conversation. It is a transaction conducted through a paper membrane, and you have stopped expecting more from it before the coffee has fully worked, because a man behind a newspaper is a man not yet ready to be a husband. You have sometimes thought, uncharitably, of what it would cost to not have the paper in the house, then dismissed the thought, because the paper is not the problem, only a symptom, and a man who wanted to hide would find another something. At least the paper is quiet. At least it does not talk back to you, which is more than you can say for the children. The children, for their part, have learned to root around their father's paper the way traffic roots around a stalled car. They ask you for things, not him, because you are reachable and he is behind the wall. In this way, the newspaper quietly makes you the sole functioning parent of the breakfast table, the one who fields every request while the other adult reads about a war on the far side of a paper curtain. His hand emerges, taps the empty cup, and you fill it, past the sports page, without either of you saying a word, an exchange you have performed 10,000 times. The hand withdraws. The cup is full. Somewhere behind the wall, presumably, a man is grateful, and you choose to believe he is because the alternative is pouring coffee into a void. Then the paper folds down, suddenly, and there is his actual face checking the clock, the wall down as fast as it went up, and it is time for him to leave. You gather the cup. The news is over. Breakfast for him is done. You do not sit down. This is the defining physical fact of the meal you have made, and you feel it in your feet before you feel it anywhere else. The coffee cups empty and you fill them. The toast runs out and you make more. A child needs something, then the other child needs the opposite thing, and you are up and down from a chair you never actually get to occupy. The percolator sits on the stove, and you keep returning to it like a small pilgrimage, pouring for everyone whose job this morning is simply to sit and receive. A chair at the table has your name on it, in theory. It is set. It has a plate in front of it, and you will not touch it, not legally forbidden from sitting, but somehow just as firmly barred, not for more than the 3 seconds it takes to deliver something and rise again, because the meal you built runs on your motion, and the moment you sit, something needs refilling, wiping, fetching, or rescuing. You are the moving part in a machine of stationary people. The coffee is the worst of it, because coffee is bottomless and Walter's thirst for it is a geological force. His cup drains and you fill it. It drains and you fill it again. You have crossed the distance between the stove and his chair so many times you could walk it blind with a full pot, a trained animal on a track worn into the floorboards. The tyranny of the refill is a specific one. It is not one big task. It is 100 tiny ones, each too small to refuse, each landing just as you had finally turned to another job. More coffee, more toast, more juice. The spilled thing wiped, the dropped fork replaced, the whined request answered. None of it is heavy. All of it is constant. It is a job made entirely of interruptions to itself. Your feet keep the tally, your mouth never will. There is an ache that starts in the arch and settles in by the second cup, the specific ache of a woman who has been vertical since before dawn on a hard kitchen floor, and it will be with you now until you finally sit, hours from now, when the house is empty. The magazines never draw this part. The radiant woman in the advertisement is always serenely still. You have not been still since your eyes opened. Dr. Ainsley once told you to rest your feet in the mornings, and you nearly laughed in his clean, quiet office, because the instruction assumed a morning in which resting was a thing that could happen. And your mornings are not that kind of morning, you thanked him. You did not rest your feet. There was, as ever, coffee to pour. The great cruelty and the great skill of it is that you make the constant motion invisible. To the people at the table, the coffee simply stays full, the toast simply keeps arriving, the needs simply get met, as though the table were enchanted, as though breakfast replenished itself. They do not see the pilgrimage, they see a full cup. The labour that fills it has been polished down to nothing, which is exactly how everyone prefers it, including, on your prouder days, you. You pour Walter's fourth cup and the pot runs low, so you set a second batch percolating even now at the tail end of the meal, because there is always another cup coming. There is always another need forming, and a good engine anticipates. The new pot begins its patient gurgle. You will not drink from it. It is not for you. And through it all, the chair with your name on it sits empty at the table, plate untouched, a monument to the meal you made and did not eat, the one seat that stays cold while every other fills and empties. You glance at it once, briefly, and then the boy needs more juice, and you are moving again, and the chair goes on waiting for a woman who will not come. Your own breakfast, such as it is, happens standing at the counter with your back to the table. It is a piece of cold toast and the ends of the eggs that nobody wanted, eaten fast between refilling cups and answering demands. You drink the instant coffee now, the fast kind, the kind you would never serve. There is a particular skill to eating while remaining on duty, chewing with one eye on the griddle and one ear on the table, and you have mastered it the way you have mastered everything else here, which is to say without anyone noticing you had to. Your breakfast is made of remainders. It is the burnt strip you would not serve, the scrambled egg that got a little dry, the heel of the loaf nobody claimed, the last cold inch of the first pot of coffee. You did not plan a meal for yourself, because planning one would require imagining yourself as a person who eats, and the morning has no room for that fantasy. So you eat standing, at the counter, facing the wall, a plate balanced on the sink, forking up scraps between errands. It is not sad, exactly, though it looks sad written down. It is simply efficient. A woman who sits down commits to sitting, and you cannot commit to anything for longer than it takes a cup to empty across the room. Standing, you are always already up, always ready to move, halfway to the next task with a bite still in your mouth. The posture of it tells the whole story, and yours stays upright, tireless and turned away, hour after hour. Everyone you love is seated, face toward each other, eating a meal. You are behind them, upright, facing away, eating the parts of that meal they declined. You are at the edge of the scene you created, present at the breakfast the way a stagehand is present at the play, essential and offstage at once. The instant coffee is your reward and your secret, the cup you would be ashamed to serve and are perfectly happy to drink, brown and fast and honest. It does not need to be good. It needs to be hot and immediate, a jolt taken on the move, and it delivers exactly that. You drink it in swallows between other things, and it does its quiet chemical work, and it asks nothing of you, which is more than the rest of the morning can say. Your mother ate this way too, you remember now, standing at her own counter with her back to her own table, and you never once thought about it as a child, never wondered why she was not sitting with the rest of you. It simply was. The mother stood. You absorbed it the way you absorbed everything, without question. And here you are, standing, your daughter watching from the table, absorbing it in her turn. That thought lands somewhere tender, and you set it down fast, the way you set down a skillet handle that has been on the flame too long. You do not want to teach her this, and you have no idea how not to, short of sitting down, which is not on today's schedule. The lesson is in the posture, in the plate balanced on the sink, in the mother who feeds everyone and eats the scraps standing up, and it transmits whether or not you ever say a word about it. You finish the cold toast in 2 bites and drain the instant coffee and rinse the plate that was barely used, all in the time it takes Walter to notice his cup is low again. Your breakfast is over. It lasted 90 seconds. It happened standing up, facing a wall, made of things no one else wanted, and it will happen again exactly this way tomorrow. Then the cup across the room goes empty, and you are moving before it fully lands on the saucer, your own meal already forgotten, back on your feet where the morning keeps you, feeding the seated people the warm, fresh food while you swallow the cold leftover kind on the move. Breakfast is not even the only meal you are making right now, because the school lunches have to go out the door with the children, which means you are building them at the same time. You have the metal lunchboxes open on the counter, the ones with the cowboy on the lid, and you are making sandwiches and cutting apples with one hand while turning eggs with the other. It is 2 meals produced simultaneously by one person who has not yet eaten either of them. You wrap the sandwiches in waxed paper and fold the tops down neat, because neatness is somehow also required here. The lunchboxes wait open on the counter like small metal mouths, and you feed them while the stove demands your other attention, a woman assembling noon while she serves dawn. Ronnie's box has the cowboy on it, the one riding a rearing horse, and his sister's has a different one she chose specifically because it was not her brother's, and both are dented at the corners from being dropped down stairwells with the enthusiasm only a child can bring to a metal object. So you run 2 kitchens at once. The griddle is one, the counter is the other. On the counter, bread gets laid out, spread, filled, closed, cut, and wrapped. An assembly line running parallel to the breakfast one, both of them staffed entirely by you, both of them due at once. You spread the peanut butter with a knife still faintly greasy from the toast, and you do not have time to be bothered by that, and neither later will the sandwich. The sandwiches carry their own tyranny of preference, rigid, specific, and absolute. Ronnie will eat peanut butter and jelly and nothing else, ever, under any circumstances, and if the jelly soaks the bread, he will not eat it, and will report the soggy betrayal at length that evening. So you spread the peanut butter to the very edges as a sealant, a waterproofing trick, jelly in the centre, dry margins all around, engineering a sandwich to survive 4 hours in a metal box. Your daughter, contrarian to the last, wants bologna, no jelly, mustard on one side only, and considers her brother's peanut butter babyish. And the 2 lunches must be built to 2 entirely separate specifications while eggs cook and coffee empties. You keep both orders in your head alongside the breakfast orders, a small woman running a large catering operation with a staff of 1 and a clock that does not care. Into each box goes the sandwich, an apple you have quartered so the small teeth can manage it, a few cookies from the jar if the jar allows, and a thermos of milk if the milk held out. You arrange it the way you arrange everything, with a pointless care, the cookies where they will be found, the apple where it will not bruise the bread. Nobody will notice the arrangement. You do it anyway. You always do it anyway. Miss Abernathy, the teacher, has told the mothers that a good lunch makes a good student. One more expert weighing in on one more thing you are apparently responsible for, and so the lunch is not merely food. It is a daily report card on your mothering, packed in a dented cowboy box and graded by a woman you have met twice. You wrap the sandwich a little neater for that reason. The waxed paper folds crisp. You snap the lunch boxes shut, both of them latched and packed and ready by the door, 2 complete meals built in the margins of another meal, and you set them by the school shoes so they cannot possibly be forgotten, though one of them will be forgotten anyway, and you will find it at noon and sigh. The boxes gleam, dented and cheerful, cowboys riding. Then it is back to the griddle, noon handled, dawn still in progress, 2 meals down and a whole day of them still to come, wiping the peanut butter from your hands onto the apron that has already seen far worse. Before the children can leave the table, there is the matter of their health, which has been made your daily responsibility in the form of vitamins. Maybe it is a spoonful of cod liver oil, administered against loud protest, or maybe you have graduated to the newer flavoured tablets that go down without a fight. Either way, you are the one who remembers, who lines up the doses, who stands over each child until the thing is swallowed. Breakfast is the delivery system for this small medical routine, and you are the reluctant nurse, dispensing wellness one grimacing child at a time. The cod liver oil is a substance from an older, crueler tradition, kept in a brown bottle that has personally traumatized generations. It tastes, by all accounts, like a fish died of despair, a flavour that should be illegal in several countries, and administering it is a daily battle in which you hold the spoon, and a betrayed little face regards it as an act of war. You promise it is good for them. The child does not believe you, correctly senses that good for you and pleasant are unrelated, and clamps the mouth shut. Blessedly, the age of the flavoured chewable has dawned, And for the younger set, there are now vitamins that taste faintly of orange and go down as a treat rather than a punishment. This is progress, real progress, the kind that saves you a fight before dawn, and you are pathetically grateful for it. Somewhere a chemist figured out how to hide medicine inside candy, and that chemist deserves a monument, or at least your quiet daily thanks. Consider why this became your job, unassigned, unpaid, and unquestioned. Nobody assigned it in writing. But the health of the children is understood to be maternal territory, filed alongside the cooking and the cleaning and the remembering of every birthday, and so it falls to you to know that the vitamins exist, to buy them, to store them, to remember them each morning, and to enforce their swallowing. The father provides the income. You provide, apparently, the immune system. You line the doses up by the plates like a small pharmacy, one for each child, and you administer them in the narrow window between the last bite and the coat, because a dose forgotten is a dose that does not happen, and a child who escapes the table without the vitamin is a child you will worry about all day for no rational reason. The worry is not rational. The worry is maternal. They are, it turns out, the same thing. Dr. Ainsley leans across his desk and tells you cheerfully that the children need their vitamins in winter, handing it over as a simple sentence, a sentence that became, on your end, a daily bottle and a daily battle, and a daily thing to remember among the 400 other things. Doctors dispense advice in single sentences. Mothers dispense it in decades. The children submit, eventually, because they always eventually submit, the chewable swallowed or the dreadful spoon endured, and you watch each small throat to confirm the swallow, because you have been fooled before by a child who held it in the cheek and spat it into a napkin with the cunning of a tiny convict. You know that trick. You know all the tricks. You invented several of them yourself, once, a lifetime ago, at a table like this one. Dose confirmed, throats cleared, the children are released toward their coats, medically fortified against a winter that has not asked their permission. It is a slight thing, the morning vitamin, 30 seconds of the whole production, and yet it carries the entire weight of a mother's low constant fear that something, someday, will get one of them, and that she will not have done everything she could. You cap the bottle and set it back on its shelf, ready for tomorrow's dose and tomorrow's small battle, and you turn the children toward the door, one more duty discharged in the endless quiet campaign of keeping two small people alive and upright and, against considerable resistance, healthy. On your shelf sits the cookbook, the big red and white Betty Crocker with the cracked spine, and you turn to it the way other people turn to a wise friend. When you want to get the coffee cake right, or you need to know how long the sausage should go, Betty tells you, warmly and confidently, in the tone of a woman who has your best interests at heart. You have never once wondered whether she is real, because the answer would not help you. What helps you is the recipe, and Betty always has the recipe, and this morning you need the recipe. The book falls open to the pages you use most, the spine broken in exactly the places your mornings live, a little topographic map of your cooking pressed into the binding, coffee cake, page-worn soft, pancakes, edge-greased translucent, biscuits, a thumbprint of shortening set into the margin like a fossil. You could recite half of it from memory and you consult it anyway, because Betty's presence on the counter is steadying in a way a memorized recipe is not. Here is the thing you know, and never say, Betty Crocker does not exist. She never did. She was invented by a flour company, a signature at the bottom of a letter that grew a first name and a personality and eventually a face, and the warm, wise woman who seems to hold your hand through a recipe is a marketing decision made in an office by people who wanted to sell you flour. You know this. You use her anyway. The trick works on you completely, and you are not a foolish woman. Betty is patient, warm, and forgiving. Betty never sighs at your questions. Betty assumes you are competent and treats you like a friend and hands you a recipe that actually works, every time. And in a life full of people who need things from you, a book that only gives is a genuine comfort, even a book wearing the mask of someone who was never born. On the television now there is even a face for her, an actress named Miss Adelaide Hawley who stands in a bright studio kitchen and demonstrates the recipes as Betty, and the whole country watches a hired woman play an invented woman bake a real cake, and somehow trusts the cake more for it. It is a hall of mirrors and it ends in a coffee cake, and the coffee cake is good, so nobody minds the mirrors. They say the book is in nearly every kitchen in the country, second only to the Bible on the household shelf, which is a strange and telling ranking. The holy book and the flower company's imaginary friend, side by side, both consulted for guidance, both trusted absolutely. You do not have time to work out what it says that the era's two great authorities were the Word of God and a woman who was a trademark. The coffee cake needs 25 minutes. You find the page, run a floured finger down the ingredients, and get to work with Betty open beside you, and the loneliness of the early kitchen lifts a little, because someone, even an invented someone, is keeping you company at the counter. That is the quiet genius of the thing. They did not just sell you flour, they sold you a friend who comes free with the flour, and asks nothing, and never leaves. The recipe carries you through, as it always does, Betty's confident measurements turning your scattered morning into a coffee cake that will rise and brown and please the table. You dust the flour from her open pages, careful of the cracked spine, because for all that she is a fiction you would not want to damage. Then you close the book and slide it back into its worn slot on the shelf, your imaginary friend retired until tomorrow's question, and you slide the coffee cake into the oven on the strength of advice from a woman who was, from the very beginning, a beautiful and useful lie. There is a woman you are competing with, and she lives in the magazines, and she is winning. She appears in the advertisements and the illustrations, always in a spotless kitchen, always in a pressed dress, serving a breakfast that gleams while her children beam and her husband looks up from his paper to adore her. You know, somewhere sensible in your head, that she is a drawing paid for by a company that wants to sell you flour. You compare yourself to her anyway this morning, with grease on your apron and a child crying over the wrong cereal. She has never had grease on anything. She is on the cover of the magazine that came in the mail, and inside, over and over, a slightly different version of the same impossible woman. Her hair holds. Her lipstick does not smudge. Her apron stays white through what is clearly a full breakfast, defying every law of grease and physics you battle daily. She holds up a casserole or a coffee cake and glows, lit from within by the satisfaction of a job the artist never had to actually do. The children in the picture are the real fantasy. They sit up straight. They smile at their eggs. They do not cry over the wrong cereal or fight over the prize or announce that the eggs are touching the toast. They are small, clean, grateful people, and they do not exist, and yet there they are, setting a standard, your actual sticky, complaining, beloved children will be quietly measured against and found, through no fault of their own, to be merely real. The husband in the picture is the most fictional element of all, attentive, admiring, and wide awake. He is looking up from his newspaper. He is looking at her with visible appreciation, actively noticing the breakfast and the woman who made it. Your husband is a good man, and he has not looked up from the sports page in the direction of a fried egg in living memory. The drawing shows a gaze you have not received across a breakfast table in years, and it aches a little to see it, printed there in ink, being given so freely to a woman who is not real. You know the trick. You are not a fool. Mrs. Voss, who has a year of college, explained it to you once over the fence, how the whole magazine is an advertisement wearing the clothes of a friend, how every glowing kitchen is there to make you feel you are falling short, so you will buy the flour or the mix or the appliance that promises to close the gap. You understood it completely. It did not help. Knowing a hook is a hook does not stop it from catching you. The cruelty of the drawn woman is that she cannot lose. She never burns anything because the artist does not draw burning. She is never tired, because exhaustion does not photograph. She has no aching feet, no instant coffee secret, no chair sitting empty at the table. She is the breakfast without the labour, the result with none of the cost, and she is held up to you every single month as the thing you should effortlessly be. And you look at your own kitchen, the real one, with its grease can and its faded apron and its crying child and its magnificent, chaotic, actual breakfast, and for a moment the comparison stings, and you catch yourself smoothing your own apron flat, as if the drawn woman on the page could somehow see it. Then the crying child needs you, really needs you, in a way no drawing ever will, and you set the magazine down and go, because the fake woman serves a fake family and you serve a real one, and only one of those jobs is actually hard. You slide the magazine to the end of the counter, face down, the glowing woman turned to the wall, and you turn back to your grease and your noise and your genuine, unbeautiful, unphotographed morning, which is losing to a drawing and is worth infinitely more than one. The Wheaties box makes a promise, and the promise is aimed straight at your maternal anxiety. It calls itself the Breakfast of Champions, and it puts a famous athlete on the front, and the quiet message, the one that lands without ever being said aloud, is that a good mother feeds her children the cereal that builds champions. You pour it because a small, illiterate voice at the table demanded it after seeing the ball player, and because some part of you half believes the box. If greatness is a breakfast cereal, you would hate to be the one who bought the wrong one. The box is orange and confident, and it has a baseball player on it this month, a grinning man mid-swing, and the words are right there, Breakfast of Champions, printed like a fact. It does not say your child will become a champion if he eats these flakes. It does not have to say it. The whole design is built to plant the idea and let your own worry water it, and your worry, well fed and always growing, obliges. Because here is the anxious arithmetic every mother runs and no mother admits to. What if it is true? Even a little. What if the difference between a strong child and a weak one really is in the box, and you cheaped out and bought the plain flakes and quietly doomed your son to mediocrity over a nickel? It is absurd. You know it is absurd. You buy the Wheaties anyway, because the cost of being wrong about your child is not a cost you are willing to test. The athlete on the front is doing a very old job, grinning, muscled, and well paid. He is a champion, a real one, and he has lent his grin to a cereal box for a fee, and now he stands in your cupboard vouching for the flakes with his whole muscled reputation. Your son saw him on the box and now believes with total sincerity that these specific flakes contain the ball player's power, available for the eating. He is 7. He cannot read the box. He absorbed the promise anyway, straight through the picture, exactly as designed. The gall of it is that the campaign skips past you and speaks directly to the child, who then does your marketing for you, for free. You are not the target. You are the wallet. The target is the small person pointing at the box in the grocery aisle, moved by a picture of a strong man, delivering the demand you will ultimately pay for. A 7-year-old made into a salesman aimed at his own mother. The grocer keeps the Wheaties stacked at a child's eye level, not yours, because he knows exactly who chooses the cereal in the end, and it is not the woman doing the choosing. The whole aisle is arranged around the reach and the sightline of a demanding child, a small kingdom of bright boxes at knee height, and you push the cart through it like a woman running a gauntlet, saying, "No, no, not that one. Fine, that one. All right." You pour the champion flakes into the bowl and add the milk, and your son eats them with the solemn concentration of a boy ingesting greatness, and you let him believe it, because the belief is harmless and the flakes are, at least, genuinely not bad for him. Whole grain, the box says, and that part is even true. He is eating fortified wheat and a fantasy at once, and only one of them will actually do anything, and both of them make him happy. It is not that you believe the box, it is that you cannot quite afford to disbelieve it, not where your children are concerned, and the companies know that, and they price their promises accordingly. You fold the box shut and set it back at the child's eye level, ready for tomorrow's bowl of borrowed greatness, and you watch your son eat, strong and small and entirely convinced, and decide, as you decide every morning, that the nickel was worth it. Every convenience in this kitchen comes with a small tax of guilt, and you pay it every time you reach for a box. The mixes and the frozen things and the cans all promise to save you, and they do, but the magazines and the mother-in-law and some internal judge all whisper that a truly devoted wife makes it from scratch. So you keep a running private ledger of what you did the easy way and what you did the hard way, as if someone were checking. Nobody is checking. You check. You have made yourself the auditor of your own breakfast. The ledger is invisible and it is meticulous. Pancakes from the box, a debit. Orange juice from the can, another. Biscuits from scratch, cut by hand with the little flowered cutter. A credit, a point in your favour, entered with quiet satisfaction into the accounts nobody else will ever read. You are running a moral bookkeeping operation over a griddle, and you are, as always, both the accountant and the only person who cares about the numbers. The strange part is that the food does not know the difference, and neither does the family. A pancake from the box, hot and buttered, tastes exactly as good to a 7-year-old as a pancake built from raw flour by a woman who rose an hour earlier to do it. The child does not taste your effort. The child tastes syrup, and yet the effort feels like the point, even though the child tastes only the syrup and never wants the hour behind it. The ledger came from somewhere specific, patient, and smiling, because you did not invent it alone. Your mother-in-law, Mrs. the Elder, makes everything from scratch and mentions it, gently, constantly, the way she mentions that she irons the sheets and you, apparently, do not. She holds up the scratch biscuit as evidence of a devotion the box-using generation has lost, and she does it with a smile, which is worse, because you cannot argue with a smile. She planted the auditor. It has been on the job ever since. Here is the thing the auditor never enters into the accounts. The time you save with a box does not vanish. It goes into the child who needs help with a shoe, the lunch that has to be packed, the neighbour at the door, the 100 other jobs of the morning that no mix will ever do for you. The shortcut is not laziness. It is triage. You cut the corner on the pancake so you can be a whole person for the parts that actually need one, and there is no column in the ledger for that. Mrs. Voss, who reads more than the rest of you, said once that the whole cult of scratch cooking is just one more way to keep a woman busy and guilty and buying, and you thought about that for a week. If the mix saves you an hour, and the culture makes you feel so bad about the hour that you spend it feeling bad, then the culture has taken your hour anyway, just in a different currency. The guilt is the real tax. The box was never the problem. So this morning you reach for the box, the Bisquick or the frozen or the can, and you make the small debit in the ledger out of pure habit, and then, deliberately, you cross it out. You are not going to pay this tax today. The pancakes are good. The children are fed. The hour you saved went to a shoe and a scraped knee and a lunch packed right, and that is not a shortcut. That is the whole entire job. You close the invisible ledger and slide the box back onto the shelf, and for once you do it without the small flinch of guilt, because you have audited yourself honestly at last and found, to your genuine surprise, that you were never once in the red. The breakfast you are making this morning was decided, in part, by a television set in the living room. The cereal the children demanded, the brand of coffee in the percolator, the pancake mix in the cupboard, all of it arrived on your grocery list, because an advertisement put it there first. You are the one who pushes the cart and counts the money, but the choices were shaped upstream by men in an office who never met you. You buy what the family asks for, and the family asks for what it saw, and the loop closes quietly around the kitchen table every single week. The television is new to the house, and it has already rearranged the cupboard. Before it arrived, the grocery list came from your own head, from what your mother bought and what the neighbours mentioned and what looked good at the store. Now the list comes increasingly from the little glowing box in the corner, which spends its afternoons singing jingles at your children, and its evenings singing them at your husband. And by Saturday the whole family knows exactly which brands it wants and has no idea why. You write the list at the kitchen table with the stub of pencil from your apron pocket, and you can see, if you look honestly, that half of it is not really yours. The cereal with the tiger, because the cartoon sold it. The coffee your husband now prefers, because a commercial told him it was the mark of a discerning man. The particular ketchup, the specific soap, the exact mix, each one lodged in a family member's mind by a song they cannot stop humming and delivered to you as a demand. The jingle is the weapon, a tune that is bright, sticky, and impossible to forget. It is engineered to lodge in a human skull and not leave, carrying a brand name in on its back, and your children sing them constantly, at the table, in the bath, apparently in their sleep. They do not know the capital of their own state, but they know, note perfect, that a certain cereal is great, and the younger one drums the tune on the table with his spoon, and this knowledge translates directly, unstoppably, into your grocery bill. The men who write these songs have studied your family the way a general studies a battlefield. They know the child is the soft entry point, the one who will nag without shame or fatigue, and so they aim the brightest colours and the catchiest tunes straight at the small unguarded mind, knowing it will carry the message home and deploy it against you at the exact moment your resistance is lowest, which is always, forever, in the store with a tired child and a full cart. The grocer feels it from the other side. He tells you the brands turn over faster now, that a cereal nobody wanted last year cannot stay on the shelf this year, and neither of you says the word television, but you both know. The little box in the living room is quietly conducting the commerce of the whole neighbourhood, deciding what moves and what gathers dust, and the grocer and the housewife are both just downstream of it, adjusting. And yet you are not entirely a victim of the loop, and it is important to remember that you still hold the pencil. You still cross things off, still say no in the aisle, still buy the store brand when the name brand is a swindle, still exercise the small daily sovereignty of a woman who counts the money and knows what a dollar has to do. The television proposes. You in the end dispose. The list is shaped by the box, but it is written by your hand. You fold the finished list into your apron pocket, half your own wants and half the television's, and you return to the waiting stove where a breakfast assembled from 100 small persuasions waits to be cooked by the one person in the house who can see all the strings. There is a knock at the side door in the middle of breakfast, and it is the neighbour, needing to borrow something or share a piece of news that cannot possibly wait until a civilized hour. Now you are hosting, on top of everything, wiping your hands and putting on the face that says, of course, "Come in," while the eggs congeal behind you. She notices the kitchen, the way neighbours do, taking a quick inventory of how you are managing. You offer her coffee, because you have to, and pour it, because the percolator is right there, and add one more person to the morning you are already losing. It is Mrs. Kessler from next door, patron saint of the borrowed half cup of sugar and the unsolicited bulletin, in her housecoat, holding an empty cup, and you know before she opens her mouth that this is a two-part visit. The borrowing is the excuse, the news the mission. She needs a half cup of sugar, which she does not need, and then, in the same breath, has she heard about the Palmer house, which is why she is really here. You let her in, because the alternative is a feud. And a feud with a next-door neighbour is a slow poison you cannot afford. So the face goes on, the warm hostess face, laid over the harried cook face like a second apron, and you say, "What a nice surprise," and you mean roughly 40% of it. She settles at your table, into a chair, a thing you have not managed all morning, and looks expectantly at the coffee. Pouring the coffee is not optional, because the rule is ancient, unwritten, and absolute. A neighbour at your table gets coffee, full stop, the law of the block, enforced by the quiet judgment of every woman on the street. So you pour her a cup of the good percolated brew, the brew you serve to men who matter, and you hand it over, and there goes one of your careful cups to a visit you did not schedule and cannot easily end. The percolator empties a little faster, the morning contracts a little tighter, and all the while she is taking inventory, because that is the true business of the drop-in visit. Her eyes move, casually, expertly, across your counter and your stove and your children, cataloguing. Is the kitchen clean? Are the children dressed? Does the wife look tired? It is not cruelty. Exactly. It is the neighbourhood's informal record-keeping, the way news of who is coping and who is slipping travels the block, and you are being assessed for the ledger even as you pour her coffee with a smile. So you perform. You wipe a counter that did not need it. You speak sharply and lovingly to a child to demonstrate command. You keep the harried edge out of your voice, all while the actual eggs die a slow death on the actual stove. Hosting is a performance layered over the performance you were already giving, a play within a play, staged for an audience of one woman in a housecoat who will report her findings over 3 other fences by noon. Mrs. Voss, sharper about these things, once said the drop-in visit is how the neighbourhood keeps everyone in line. A soft surveillance dressed up as friendliness. You decide she is probably right, and pour the coffee anyway, because knowing the game does not excuse you from playing it. Eventually she winds down, her news delivered, and your kitchen surveyed, and she rises with the half cup of sugar she never wanted, and makes for the door, satisfied. You send her off warmly, because the warmth is the toll you pay for peace on the block, and you close the side door behind her with a relief you would never show. Then you turn back to the ruined eggs and the interrupted meal and the children who watched the whole performance, and you scrape the cold eggs into the grease can and start again, because the morning does not pause for company, it only ever adds it. It happens on the mornings you can least afford it. You turn away for the lunch boxes, and when you turn back the bacon has gone from done to ruined, or the pancakes have blackened on the underside. There is a decision to make in that second, and you make it fast. You scrape the casualties into the grease can, you do not say a word about it, and you start the batch again from the beginning. The family will never know there was a first attempt. Absorbing the mistake silently, so that the breakfast arrives looking effortless, is simply part of the job description nobody wrote down. The smell announces it before your eyes confirm it, that sharp, acrid edge riding in under the good breakfast smells, the unmistakable scent of a thing that has gone too far. Your head snaps toward the stove. The pancake that was golden 30 seconds ago is now wearing a black underside, and the moment of loss lands in your chest like a dropped plate, because you know exactly what it costs, time you do not have, and food that money bought, so you triage. The ruined pancake gets flipped out of the pan and set aside, or scraped into the can, and a fresh ladle of batter goes down in its place, and the whole thing takes 40 seconds you did not budget, and will have to steal from somewhere later. You do not sigh dramatically. You do not announce the setback. You simply fix it, fast and quiet, the way you fix everything, before anyone at the table registers that a breakfast has hiccuped. The silence is the real labour. It would be so easy to make a scene of it, to say, look what happened, to let the family see the effort and the near failure and the recovery. But the whole art of this job is that the effort stays invisible, that the breakfast arrives serene and complete as though it cost nothing, and so you swallow the mishap, absorb it into yourself, and present only the smooth, finished result. The mistake is yours alone to know. Your own mother, you remember, once served a slightly scorched roast at a dinner and simply carved around the black, plating the good slices and eating the burnt end herself, in silence, and you understood then dimly that this was a kind of grace, the mother eating the ruined part so the family got the good. You do the same now, without deciding to. The burnt strip is yours. The crisp ones go to the table. And here is the quiet injustice of it. The recoveries never count. Nobody will ever know that this particular breakfast survived a small disaster, that you saved it with a fast hand and a closed mouth, that the serene stack on the table is actually a monument to a crisis handled. The successes that are truly impressive are the ones nobody sees, the catastrophes averted so smoothly they leave no trace, and you rack them up daily, uncredited, a hero of a story with no witnesses. The new batch comes out golden, right this time, and you stack it and carry it to the table, and the children pour syrup and eat, blissfully unaware that they are eating attempt number 2, that attempt number 1 died in the grease can for their comfort. They will never taste the difference. That is the entire point. That is the whole grim triumph. You scrape the pan clean and wipe the black from the edge, erasing the last evidence, and you eat the burnt one yourself, standing up, because it is food, and food is not for wasting, and you are, as ever, the one who absorbs what the family cannot see. Burnt, quiet, and entirely uncredited, you carry the morning past its stumble and set it down whole. Sunday breakfast is a different animal, bigger and slower and somehow even more work despite the extra time. After church, or before it, you make the real spread, a stack of pancakes or waffles from the iron, a coffee cake with a cinnamon crumb top, maybe sweet rolls if the week allowed for it. The log cabin syrup comes out in its little tin cabin, and the table fills up in a way it never does on a Tuesday. Everyone lingers, which is lovely and also means you are on your feet longer, refilling and clearing while the family enjoys the leisure you manufactured for them. The waffle iron comes down from the high shelf where it lives all week, a heavy cast contraption that gets used exactly once every 7 days and takes up the space of something used daily, which is the privilege of the Sunday tools. You heat it, grease it, and pour, and the steam hisses up around the seam as the batter cooks into a grid of golden pockets built, it seems, for the express geometric purpose of holding syrup. It is a good machine. It earns its shelf. The coffee cake is the centerpiece, and it is where the extra Sunday effort goes. You mix it from the Betty Crocker page with the broken spine, cinnamon and sugar and butter, worked into a crumb that scatters across the top, and it goes into the oven to fill the whole house with a smell so good it functions as a second, more effective alarm clock than any bell. The children come down faster on coffee cake mornings. Even Walter surfaces early, drawn by the cinnamon like a bear from a den. The log cabin syrup bottle is a small, squat and cheerful joy in itself. It is shaped like an actual log cabin, tin walls and a little chimney for a cap, and the children love it with a devotion. The syrup itself does not entirely earn. You unscrew the chimney and pour, and the bottle glugs its brown flood over the waffles, and for once you do not ration it, because it is Sunday, and Sunday is the day the small economies relax and a child may drown a waffle if a child so chooses. The strange arithmetic of Sunday is that more time somehow makes more work, not less. On a weekday you sprint through a simple breakfast and the family scatters. On Sunday you build an elaborate one and the family stays and lingers and refills and wants seconds, and the meal stretches across an hour in which you are essentially never seated, ferrying coffee cake and waffles, and the third pot of coffee to people luxuriating in the leisure that your continuous labour is producing. Their rest has a cost, and the cost is your morning. But here is the part you do not say out loud and would not trade. You love it anyway. The lingering is the whole point. even from your post at the stove. The family gathered and unhurried, syrup everywhere, Walter actually talking instead of hiding behind the paper, the children sticky and laughing, the coffee cake vanishing slice by slice. You built this. It is your production, staged and catered and run by you. And its warmth is real even though you experience most of it in passing. On your feet, refilling. Eventually the coffee cake is a memory of crumbs, and the waffle iron has cooled, and the syrup cabin stands nearly empty, and the family drifts off to the slow pleasures of a day with no school and no office, full and content and entirely unaware of the choreography that fed them. You survey the wreckage of the good meal, the happy ruin of it, and you feel the specific, tired satisfaction of a job that was hard and worth it. Then you tie the apron a little tighter and start on the enormous stack of Sunday dishes, because the production always ends the same way, with the producer alone in the kitchen, cleaning up after the show she made, humming, a little, despite herself. If your kitchen is a southern one, the whole shape of breakfast changes, and you are up making things the magazines up north never picture. You have grits going, and biscuits in the oven, and sausage gravy thickening in a pan, and if there is country ham, you make red-eye gravy by pouring a little coffee straight into the drippings. It is heavier and older than the cereal box breakfast, tied to a place rather than a brand, and it takes real time and real technique. You stir the grits so they do not clump, because clumped grits are a small regional disgrace, and you were raised to know it. The grits go on first, because grits cannot be hurried and will punish you for trying. Coarse ground corn and water and salt, stirred and stirred over a low flame until the whole thing goes from gritty to creamy, a slow transformation that demands your attention the way a toddler demands it, constantly and without gratitude. Turn your back and they clump or scorch on the bottom, and a scorched pot of grits is a smell that lingers and a shame that lingers longer. The biscuits are where the pride lives. You make them the way your grandmother made them, cutting the cold lard into the flour with 2 knives until it looks like coarse meal, barely working the dough because a biscuit overworked is a biscuit turned to a hockey puck, and cutting them out with the same tin cutter that has been in the family longer than you have. They go into a hot oven and rise, if you did it right, into tall, flaky towers that pull apart in soft layers, and getting that rise is a craft no box has yet managed to counterfeit. Red-eye gravy is the strangest and best trick in the southern morning. You fry the country ham, salty and dark, and it leaves its drippings in the pan, and then, instead of milk, you pour in a splash of black coffee, straight from the percolator, and let it bubble up with the ham fat into a gravy that is thin, sharp, and reddish. It should not work. Coffee in gravy sounds like a mistake. It is, instead, a miracle handed down from cooks who wasted nothing, not even the last inch of the pot. Old Mr. Tucker wraps your country ham and sausage in butcher paper, cured in his own smokehouse the old way, and the flavour of it is nothing the grocer's cellophane packages can touch. You buy from him because your mother bought from his father, a chain of trust running back through the decades, ham by ham, the kind of provisioning that has nothing to do with a jingle and everything to do with a handshake at a fence. A whole different set of expectations runs this kitchen, older and more rooted, and it does not come from a television or a magazine. It comes from your grandmother and hers, from a place and its ways, from the deep assumption that a real breakfast is hot and homemade and heavy, and that a woman who serves cereal from a box has, somewhere, given up. You do not entirely agree, but you can make the biscuits, and you do, because the ability is a kind of inheritance and refusing it would feel like losing something. The biscuits come out tall, the grits go creamy, the red-eye gravy turns its strange good red, and you set it all out heavy and steaming and southern, a breakfast that would confuse a magazine and satisfy a field hand. The family falls on it without a word of thanks and every sign of pleasure, which down here amounts to the same thing. Then you sop the last of the red-eye with a biscuit heel yourself, standing at the stove, tasting the coffee and the ham and the century behind it, and you start scraping the pans, satisfied in the specific way of a woman who made the old hard thing and made it right. In winter, the whole morning gets harder, because the kitchen is cold when you come down to it, and the warmth is something you have to make along with the food. You light the stove partly for breakfast and partly just to have heat, and you stand close to it while the oatmeal thickens, because oatmeal is what winter mornings want. The children come down slower and crankier in the dark cold, and everyone crowds toward the one warm corner of the room, which is wherever you happen to be cooking. You are the source of the heat, as well as the food, which feels about right. January in this kitchen is a different country than July. The floor is so cold it comes up through the slippers. The window over the sink wears a lace of frost on the inside, and the whole room holds the deep chill of a house that let its fire die overnight. You come down into it in the dark, and the cold takes your breath a little, and the first thing you do, before the coffee even, is get a flame going, because you cannot make breakfast in a room this cold, and you cannot make yourself in it either. The stove becomes the sun of the room. You light the burners and the oven both, and the heat pools around the corner where you work, and slowly, grudgingly, the kitchen warms from that one spot outward. The frost on the window begins to weep, the chill retreats to the corners, and the family, when they descend, migrates without thinking toward the warmth, which means toward you, gathering at the stove like travellers around a campfire, holding their hands out to the heat you are standing in the middle of making. Oatmeal owns the winter, and winter wants it thick, warm, and slow. On a cold, dark morning, nobody wants a fried egg gone cold in 3 minutes. They want something hot and thick and slow, something that sits in the stomach like ballast against the cold, and oatmeal is exactly that. The Quaker cylinder tipped into the pot, the oats swelling in the milk, a bowl of it steaming with a pat of butter melting into a golden eye at the centre. It is cheap, and it is warm, and it does the job, which in January is the whole job. The man who reads the gas meter told you once that the whole street burns more in the mornings than any other time, all those stoves and furnaces roaring to life at once against the same dawn cold, and you picture it sometimes, the whole neighbourhood exhaling heat into the January dark, 100 kitchens each with a woman standing at a stove, warming a house and a family and a pot of oats against the same enormous cold. You are all fighting the same winter, separately, at the same hour. The warmth you make is not only the heat, and you know it, standing there with the family gathered around the stove. It is the light in a dark room, the hot food in cold hands, the one warm corner in a frozen house, and all of it flows from the spot where you stand and work. In summer, you are the cook. In winter, you are something closer to the hearth itself, the source everyone huddles toward. The oatmeal thickens, the kitchen finally warms, the frost on the window melts to a runnel, and the family eats their hot bowls crowded close to the stove, thawing, waking, becoming human. You keep the flame going a while longer than breakfast strictly needs, because the moment they leave for the cold outside is coming, and you would give them all the warmth you can before it does. Then the coats go on, and the door opens, and the cold rushes in, and they go out into the January dark, fed and warm for now, and you stand a moment in the heat you made, alone in the one warm room, before you turn to face the dishes and the rest of the frozen day. The refrigerator is doing a lot of quiet work for you, though it took a war and a boom to get it into the corner of this kitchen. It keeps the milk from turning and the bacon from going off, and the butter firm, jobs that your own mother handled with an iceman and a dripping wooden box, and a great deal more vigilance. You open it now, in the dark, and the little light comes on, and everything breakfast needs is cold and waiting. You take out the eggs and the bacon and the milk, and you do not for 1 second marvel at the machine that made this easy, because you are busy. It stands in the corner in confident pastel, a General Electric in a shade of yellow, somebody in a design office decided was cheerful, humming to itself, keeping a private winter inside its walls all year long. You open it a dozen times a morning without a thought, and each time the cold breathes out and the little light obeys, and the food is exactly as fresh as when you put it away, which is a quiet, everyday miracle you are far too busy to actually experience as one. Your mother did not have this. Your mother had an icebox, a wooden cabinet with a block of ice in the top that a man delivered on his shoulder with a pair of tongs, and the ice melted all day and dripped into a pan you had to remember to empty or it flooded the floor, and the whole arrangement kept things cold only in a hopeful, temporary way. She lost food to spoilage regularly, planned around it, shopped every couple of days because nothing kept. The refrigerator did not just save labour, it meant you could shop once a week instead of every day, and trust the milk to still be good on Friday. What the cold makes possible is quiet, constant, and easy to overlook. Because of this humming box, you can keep a week of milk, a dozen eggs, bacon that waits for the morning you want it, leftovers that become tomorrow's lunch, the frozen juice in its little compartment of deeper cold. Half the conveniences of your morning depend silently on the fact that this machine holds back the spoiling, the way a seawall holds back the tide, unglamorous and absolutely essential. The salesman who sold it to you called it the heart of the modern kitchen, and he was selling, but he was not wrong. Everything else in the room is about heat, the stove and the toaster and the oven, all of them adding warmth. And this one machine is about cold, the necessary opposite, the guardian against rot, the reason the eggs you are holding are still good. The kitchen runs on both, the fire and the ice, and you conduct between them all morning without a second thought. You do not thank the machine, and there is something almost right about that, because the best tools are the ones that disappear into use. The refrigerator asks nothing of you, breaks down rarely, and does its cold work in silence, and in return you forget it entirely, which is exactly the fate of everything in this kitchen that works reliably, including, most mornings, you. The things that function are the things nobody notices. You know that better than anyone. You take the eggs and the bacon and the butter and the milk, everything the machine kept safe through the night, and you nudge the heavy door shut with your hip, and the light goes out, and the private winter seals itself back up to guard the rest for tomorrow. The cold work continues behind the door whether you think about it or not. Then you carry the cold ingredients to the warm stove, from the ice to the fire, closing the small daily circuit the whole kitchen runs on, and you crack the first egg, the machine already forgotten, its silent work already taken for granted, which is the only thanks it will ever get, and, being a machine, the only thanks it needs. The family leaves, and the door closes behind them, and you turn around to face what breakfast actually left you. The table is a wreck of yolk-smeared plates and cold toast crusts and cups with an inch of coffee gone cold in the bottom. You scrape and you stack and you run the hot water, and you wash it all by hand, or load it into the new machine if you are lucky enough to have one. This is the invisible second half of the meal, the part nobody thanks you for, and it has to be done before 9, because at 9 your actual housework is considered to begin. The quiet comes down like a curtain the moment the door shuts. 1 second there is chaos, coats and lunchboxes and last demands, and the scramble for the bus, and the next there is only you, and the wreckage, and a silence so sudden it almost rings. You stand in it for a moment, the abrupt stillness of a house emptied all at once, and then you turn to the table, because the table does not care that you would like to sit in the quiet for a minute. The table has plates on it. The dishes begin and end with water, and it runs scalding, grey and endless. You fill the sink with water as hot as your hands can stand, hotter really, until they go pink, and the grease surrenders to the heat, and you work through the stack in the old order your mother taught you. Glasses first while the water is cleanest, then plates, then the greasy pans last. If you have the new automatic dishwasher, you load it instead, and bless it daily, though it does not fit the pans and cannot be trusted with the good china, so your hands go in the water regardless. The grease is the enemy, always. The bacon fat and the butter and the egg film coating everything in a stubborn slick, and hot water and a bar of soap, and your own 2 hands are the weapons against it. You scrub each plate to squeaking, rinse it, set it in the rack, and move to the next. A rhythm as steady and mindless as the one you used to make the toast. The whole breakfast now running in reverse, from full plates back to clean ones. Here is the cruelty of the timing, and it is precise. All of this, the scraping and the washing and the drying and the putting away, does not count as your work. It is the closing chore of breakfast, and breakfast was over an hour ago, and at 9 o'clock, sharp, the day's real housework begins, the cleaning and the laundry and the shopping, as though the 2 hours already on your feet were merely a warm-up, a thing that happened before the day officially started. Your day begins already exhausted. Your mother stood at a sink like this every morning of her life, and you can feel the whole line of them behind you again, women with their hands in hot water, scrubbing yolk from china while the house sat empty, and the clock ran toward 9, an unbroken chain of dishwashers passing the basin down through the generations. You have your place in the line now. Your daughter someday will have hers, whether either of you votes for it or not. The last pan comes clean. The rack fills with drying dishes catching the light that has finally fully arrived, and the table stands bare and wiped and innocent, giving no sign of the breakfast it held an hour ago. The evidence is erased. The second meal, the cleaning of the first, is done uncredited and complete, exactly on time. Then you wring the dish rag and drape it over the tap, and you glance at the clock, and it is not quite 9, which means you did it, you beat the clock again, and you have perhaps 90 seconds before the real day begins. You take them, you stand in the quiet, clean kitchen and take your 90 seconds, and then the clock says 9, and you go. The kitchen is clean now, the last cup dried and put away, and for a moment the room is quiet and yours. You stand there in the stillness with your coffee, the good percolated kind now, finally sitting down at the table you cooked at but did not eat at. It is not even 9 o'clock. You know with total certainty that you will do every part of this again tomorrow and the day after, and for years. The whole performance from the cold floor to the clean plate. The percolator ticks as it cools. You take a sip. Then you get up, because there is always something next. For these few minutes, though, you let yourself sit. The good coffee, finally, in the good cup, drunk sitting at your own clean table in your quiet kitchen, is the small daily reward at the far end of the morning, and you have earned it down to the last drop. The light is full now, coming in the window over the sink, catching the drying dishes in the rack. And the whole room has the peace of a stage after the audience has gone home. You think, sometimes in these minutes, about the sheer arithmetic of it. A breakfast every morning, 365 of them a year after year, each one built from the cold floor up and dismantled to clean plates. A small production that leaves no trace by 9 o'clock. If you added them up, all the eggs and all the toast and all the pots of coffee, the number would be absurd, somewhere north of 10,000 eggs alone, a monument nobody built because it was made of mornings and mornings do not last. And yet, and here is the thing you had once said, it was not nothing. Every one of those vanished breakfasts fed people you love and sent them out into their days steadied and warm. The work disappeared, but the children it raised did not, and the marriage it fed did not, and the home it held together did not. A thing can be invisible and still be load-bearing. Most of the important things are. Tomorrow it starts again in the dark. The alarm you do not need going off in your own body, the cold floor, the percolator, the bacon, the 4 eggs 4 ways, the whole relay from vanity to sink. You know every step of it. You could do it in your sleep and nearly will. The whole relay is long, familiar, and relentless. The relentlessness is the hardest part and also, strangely, a kind of comfort, because a thing you must do every morning is a thing you never have to decide about. The mornings hold you as much as you hold them. Somewhere out past the window the neighbourhood is doing the same. All the women of the block finishing their own mornings, sitting down for their own stolen cups, a whole invisible profession clocking a break at the same quiet hour before the real day claims them. You are not alone in it, though it often feels that way at the cold start. You are one of an army, and the army is having its coffee now, briefly, together, apart. The cup goes empty. The minutes are up. There is laundry and shopping and 100 other jobs stacking up behind the morning, and the 90 seconds of stillness were only alone against the day. You rise from the one chair you finally let yourself use, and you rinse the last cup, your own, and set it in the rack with the others. And then you stand a moment in your clean, quiet kitchen, in the full morning light. A woman who fed her whole family before 9 and will do it again tomorrow. And you feel it, under the tiredness, quiet and real, not pride exactly, but something steadier. You made the morning. You always make the morning. Then you untie the apron, hang it back on its hook, and go, because the day, as ever, is waiting, and so is tomorrow, and so is the one after that. And that was the morning. You rose in the dark before anyone else, did your hair for an audience of no one, and started a percolator that took its sweet time. You fried 4 eggs 4 different ways, argued with the bacon, kneaded orange dye into a block of margarine, and turned a frozen cylinder back into orange juice. You woke the children, dosed them with vitamins, packed the lunchboxes, and set a perfect plate in front of a man who read the newspaper through the whole thing. You ate cold toast standing up, if you ate at all. Then you washed every dish before 9 and called it the start of your day. The women who actually did this were not the smiling drawings in the magazines. They were tired and clever and up before the sun, running a full kitchen operation on no wages and less thanks, and they did it again the next morning, and the one after that, for years. There is something quietly staggering about a percolator that ticked as it cooled in 10 million kitchens at once, and a grease can that was never quite emptied, passed along like a small family heirloom. The bacon was real, the labour was real, the effortlessness was the only thing that was staged. Thank you for spending this quiet hour here with me. You do not have to fry anything, or wake anyone, or set a single fork. There is nothing on the stove and no one at the door. So let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your hands go loose and heavy on the blanket. Let the warmth gather under the covers and let your breathing slow all the way down, in through the nose, out through the mouth, softer each time. Let the dark room hold you. Settle deeper into your pillow and let the day fade out behind you. The kitchen is clean, the coffee is finely poured, and for once, nobody needs you for anything at all. Sleep well,